ballot boxes are sealed and the votes are now being counted in Singapore's second by-election in less than a year.
Well, some 31,000 residents of Punggol East constituency in northeast Singapore will soon find out which of the four candidates vying for their vote will represent them in Parliament. Good evening, I'm Dominic Loy and you're watching a special extended edition of Primetime Weekend where we're counting down to the result in the Punggol by-election.
And you'll hear that official result first here on Channel News Asia. Hello there, I'm Sharon Tong. In our comprehensive coverage of this poll, our reporters are on the ground tracking the candidates and the up-to-the-minute developments.
I'm S. Ramesh and I'm here at the North Vista Secondary School, and it is one of two counting centres for the Punggol East by-election. And it is from here that the returning officer, Mr. Yam Ami, will announce the results. We'll bring you more.
I'm Wong Siu Ying and I'll bring you the reactions from residents at a coffee shop near one of the counting centres. Political rookie, election newbie, but has PAP's candidate Koh Poh Koon managed to convince voters that he's the best man for the job, and has he won the hearts and minds of residents in Punggol East? My name is Mei Wong and I'll be tracking this developing story for you on the by-elections in Punggol East here at the PAP's Assembly Centre.
I'm Imelda Saad. I'm at a coffee shop at the heart of Punggol East. Now, this is, of course, a typical place where residents have a meal out with their friends and family members. And I'm tracking the movements of Workers' Party candidate Li Lian, who's, of course, a familiar face to residents here, having contested in the same ward at the last general elections.
I'm Hasnita Majid and I'll be trailing the Singapore Democratic Alliance candidate for Punggol East, Desmond Lim, and his supporters throughout the night. This is Mr. Lim's second step at the single-seat constituency of Punggol East. The first time round was in the 2011 general election where he garnered about 4.5% of valid votes.
I'm Saiful Bari Ismail and I'll be trailing the Reform Party candidate. Kenneth Jaratnam says that no more broken promises. Find out if residents have bought his campaign promise.
And also joining us in the studio tonight, Dr. Gillian Koh, to help us analyse the developments tonight. Dr. Koh is a senior research fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies right here in Singapore.
Now, you'll also notice a little extra on our screen tonight. The tweet ticker will keep you up to speed with all the buzz on Punggol East.
And tonight we're also tracking headline news stories from around the world as well. The Egyptian army to deploy in Port Said. The death toll is climbing after a court hands out capital punishment over a soccer stadium disaster.
And tight security as India marks Republic Day with a show of military might.
But first, it's 9 p.m. right here in Singapore, and vote counting is underway in a by-election for the constituency of Punggol East. Polling stations opened at 8 a.m. and closed just about an hour ago.
Now, four candidates are vying for some 31,650 votes. They are the People's Action Party's candidate Koh Poh Koon, the Reform Party's Kenneth Jaratnam,
Desmond Lim from the Singapore Democratic Alliance, and the Workers' Party's Li Lian. Well, they made their rounds throughout the day to observe the voting process as Punggol East residents made their choice.
The ballot boxes from the 10 polling centres were sealed and taken to the two counting centres. They are Rivervale Primary School and North Vista Secondary School. Election officials have opened and emptied the ballot boxes, and they're now counting the votes in the presence of election agents from all four parties.
Well, the four candidates are also at the counting centres to observe the process. Results are expected after 10 p.m, just right about an hour from now, and returning officer Yam Ami will announce the outcome.
Well, Channel News Asia's S. Ramesh is at North Vista Secondary School. Now, North Vista is both a counting and announcement centre. And Ramesh, we understand all four candidates have so far arrived at this particular counting and announcement centre. Is that right?
Yes, Sharon and Dominic, I'm here at the North Vista Secondary School, and it's a media frenzy here at the North Vista Secondary School, with each candidate arriving to inspect and to oversee the counting process together with their election agents. Now, the first person to arrive here once the gates closed at 8 p.m. was the Workers' Party candidate Li Lian, who had to wait for a while in her car before the gates could be opened, as there were some procedures for the election agents to observe inside the counting hall before the candidates could be let in. But once Miss Li Lian arrived, she was definitely very busy in her car, messaging, some people and updating them on what was going on here at the counting center before. It took about 15 minutes before her car and the other vehicles of the candidates, Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam, Mr. Desmond Lim, and last but not least, of course, Dr. Kopo Kun, who just arrived, say, about 15 minutes ago here, smiling and waving at the residents and the media who were waiting for him to alight from his car to walk into the counting center here at North Vista Secondary School, where we just had a quick word with some of the PAP members who have been accompanying Dr. Kopo Kun throughout his campaign period over the 9 days ever since nomination day. And one of them just told us that they are very hopeful. They don't think it'll be a long night. And so let's see what happens inside the counting center. Of course, we will be getting updates from here at North Vista and also the other candidates, reporters from Channel News Asia, who are all within the vicinity of North Vista Secondary School and also trailing the candidates as they move in and out of North Vista Secondary School to monitor the counting process and also to keep their supporters and their voters and residents who have been supporting them throughout this period updated on the developments here as counting gets underway at North Vista and Rivervale Primary School. Now, of course, there's just a condominium opposite the North Vista Secondary School, although the condominium is not part of Punggol East. There's a lot of buzz, and the residents who are staying in the condominium are here gathered in large numbers outside the school to observe what's going on. Now, between 8 and 8:30, two buses, bringing the ballot boxes and ballot papers, and the officials who were involved in the process arrived here to deliver the ballot papers for the counting process. We'll bring you more as development takes place. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much for that update. And our colleague Wang Siu Ying is also out on the field. She's at a coffee shop near the announcement center. Siu Ying, what's the mood over there?
Well, hi, Dom, Sharon. Now, as you can see, I'm actually 100 meters away from the North Vista Secondary School Counting Center, and it's quite the opposite here. As you can see, the mood here is very subdued. In fact, diners told me that the atmosphere here is no different from any other Saturday night. Now, I spoke to some of them earlier. Only a handful of them voted today. The rest of them, they do not live here. Earlier, I had the chance to talk to some residents, and they said that, no matter who gets elected today, they want the MP to be able to address certain issues, for instance, improving public transport here, also providing more facilities for residents like childcare centres and also more wet markets. Dom, Sharon?
All right, thanks very much for that, Siu Ying. Now, also, let's move on to the candidates' supporters where they are gathered. Now, Channel News Asia's May Wong is at the People's Action Party branch office in the constituency. May, is there anything exciting happening at the PAP branch office?
Indeed, there is, Sharon. Well, a group of supporters had already gathered here a couple of hours ago just to give support to Dr. Kopo Kun before he left for North Vista Secondary School, where my colleague Ramesh mentioned earlier about the fact that he was there to observe the counting procedures. In there, right about now, we have about maybe 50 grassroots activists, not just from this constituency, but also from surrounding constituency, such as Pasir Ris, Punggol GRC, as well as McPherson GRC, and even as far away as Marine Parade GRC. So they have all come over here to give him support, to give him encouragement. And earlier, before he left the center, they actually had a rousing greeting and a rousing shout to cheer him on. In addition to that, we have a lot of people around here. You can't see because the camera can't really move around. But I noticed that there are some residents who have actually come down to see what the buzz is about. And actually, we have a lot more media personalities here than anything else. But just to give you a little bit of a background, this constituency, 32,000 voters, as you mentioned earlier, most of them are from the middle class as well as the upper middle class, and most of them, about 60% of them, actually live in 5-room flat or larger in public housing. So that's the kind of constituents that you can expect going to the polls and who went to the polls this morning. When it comes to asking for services, when it comes to asking for facilities, it seems to be general across the board. What we're looking for, what residents were looking for, more setup of childcare centres like what my colleague Siu Ying mentioned earlier, more elder care centres that you're hoping to see, more transport services and expansion of the transport network services which they're hoping to see, and also more amenities such as malls as well as coffee shops and eateries. So these are the kind of common askings that they have in terms of the residents asking for candidates. And what Dr. Koh Poh Koon, the PAP candidate, has been telling residents is that he has a plan in mind. He has got a number of lists in terms of the facilities and the services that he would like to roll out. And throughout the 90s of campaigning, that's exactly what he was harping on in terms of telling residents that he's got a plan and he will be able to execute those concrete plans if he's voted into Parliament.
All right, thank you so much, May, for that update. And we have Imelda Saad with us also. She's on the line and she's tracking the Workers' Party supporters. Imelda.
Yes, Don. Well, I've actually moved to Hougang. This is the bastion of the opposition Workers' Party. Now, Hougang just borders the Punggol East constituency, and it's really noisy here. I hope you can hear me. The several Workers' Party supporters have gathered here. They're carrying placards. They've got drums with them. They've got whistles, and there's even a trumpeter. Now, for the Workers' Party, this is not just another by-election. Workers' Party members and leaders have pitched this as a mini referendum on the ruling People's Action Party's performance since the last general election. And in fact, the party's leaders and also their candidate, Li Lian, has said that they should vote in Ms. Lee just to strengthen the Workers' Party's voice in Parliament. Now, Ms. Lee is, of course, not new to Punggol East. She's contested in the ward before, and she garnered 41% of valid votes then at the last general elections, and she's hoping to improve on her performance. Of course, if she wins this time, it will make history not just for her, but also for the Workers' Party. If she wins, she will be the first woman opposition candidate to have won a single-member constituency since 1965. So this election is closely watched by the Workers' Party. Back to you.
Thanks very much for that, Imelda. Now, it's certainly noisy over there. Now, trailing the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim, we've got reporter Hasnita Majid. Hasnita, what's happening on your end? All right, I understand the line has been cut, but we'll try and get Hasnita back a little later. Meantime, let's check in on the reporter who is trailing the Reform Party candidate Kenneth Jeyaratnam, that is Saiful Bari Ismail. Saiful, any news on what's happening in the Reform Party camp? Saiful?
All right, looks like we have a bit of a technical issue and we'll work that out soon enough. And the Punggol East by-election was called when the former PAP MP and Speaker of Parliament, Michael Palmer, resigned after admitting to an extramarital affair, and he won the ward in the 2011 general election with 54.5% of the votes.
Now, if you remember, the Workers' Party candidate, Ms. Li Lian, was also contesting in that general election in 2011. She received 41.4% of the votes. And if you remember, it was a three-cornered fight during the 2011 elections. And the Singapore Democratic Alliance's candidate, Mr. Desmond Lim, was also contesting then, and he got 4.5% of the votes.
That's right. And in the studio tonight, we have Dr. Gillian Koh. She's Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies right here in Singapore. So, Dr. Koh, we can't help but, compare this with the by-election held earlier in Hougang under very similar circumstances. But are we looking at the same issues, that the voters are concerned with, or are they completely different right now?
Well, first off, good evening, Dominic and Sharon. It's good to be here again. The comparison with Hougang, well, first off, we have to remember that the PAP is the incumbent in this ward, so it's different. And we're looking at the by-election effect. So what does that mean? It means that voters know that they're very comfortable with the PAP government in place already, and so they're prepared to think more broadly about, the opposition parties and take a second or third thought about whether they'd like maybe an alternative party to come, and then we would see a swing, therefore, from what used to be a PAP ward to a WP ward. It's different from Hougang, which was held by WP. It was actually their crown jewel, and so it was a question of them holding it.
Now, you talked about the by-election effect, and of course, in the process of campaigning, I think the Workers' Party did try to use that to entice voters to vote Workers' Party instead. Do you think there is actually a chance this will happen, that the by-election effect will happen? And, based on what the PAP camp has been doing, do you think what they've done would be enough to counter this strategy?
Well, that's exactly what we're looking at. We're trying to see how well the PAP has been able to counter the by-election effect. In fact, that's why they've been rather allergic to by-elections. The last one we had was in 1992, before the Hougang in last year. So I think what you have is the PAP pulling out all the stops. You've seen that they've not just offered a good candidate, but somebody they've said is likely to be an office holder. And not only that, in the midst of the hustings, you have the PA government announce many, many measures that address things at the national level, but also clearly very attractive for people in the middle class, people in Punggol East who live in bigger flats, who are in the sandwich class because they have younger children and older people. So you see the measures on transport, which addresses directly the issues that have been raised in Punggol East. You've seen the measures for marriage and parenthood, and a lot more support for things like childcare, which is another issue that has been raised among the Punggol East residents. So you've seen the PAP actually work very, very hard to say that they've not just got national policies that are good for everyone, but they're actually precisely going to be useful, exactly what Punggol East residents want.
So those announcements are not exactly a coincidence.
Well, from what I know, they were already in the pipeline. In fact, when the when the member of Parliament for Punggol East had to stand down, the PM's first statement was that it would be a very busy year. There would be many, many national issues, including a white paper on population. So there was going to be announcements on infrastructure, which we've heard, marriage and parenthood. So these were already in the pipeline, and it didn't hurt that these were introduced during the hustings.
Now, I mean, since we're talking here, it's early. I mean, it's just an hour plus after polling is closed and counting is in progress. Just looking at the past, the 9 days of campaigning, would you say this has been a good, clean fight?
Well, I think that's what's also another point that's different from Hougang. I think there was less of a discussion about the precise sort of background of the candidates and whether they were fit for the role, or, we remember a lot of controversy that was raised about the WP candidate at that time, who is now the MP for Hougang. We've not seen that in this by-election. What we've seen is candidates talking about themselves, but their opponents not really taking issue with that. In fact, most parties were talking about what they wanted to campaign on, rather than negative campaigning and saying why the others.
So the focus on the issues rather than personal attacks.
Yes, that's right.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Koh. We'll speak to you much more later in the program. And if you're on the move, you can also get updates from our website. That's channelnewsasia.com/Punggol East.
Well, let's take a quick break right now, but coming up, we've got reports from polling stations, including those overseas as well. So do stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Channel News Asia's full coverage of the Punggol East by-election on this special edition of Primetime Weekend. Now, the four candidates are out observing the vote counting process, which started after polls closed at 8 p.m.
Ms. Li Lian from the Opposition Workers' Party was among the first to arrive at North Vista Secondary School, one of the two counting centres, and she's a familiar face at the single-seat constituency. In the last general election in 2011, she picked up 41% of the votes in Punggol East.
Now, the People's Action Party's candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, made his way to the counting centre from the party's branch office in Punggol East. The PAP won this constituency with some 54% of the vote in 2011.
Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam from the Reform Party is seen arriving at one of the counting centres. Now, each party can field a team to observe the counting process, which is right now underway.
And the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim also making his rounds this evening. He had quite a low-key campaign compared to the other candidates. Some 31,600 residents of Punggol East were eligible to vote, and we're expecting results after 10 p.m.
All right, Hasnita Majid is trailing the Singapore Democratic Alliance, Desmond Lim. She joins us now with more. Hasnita?
Hi, Dom. I'm now staking out outside the house of SDA candidate Desmond Lim. He was at the counting centre at North Vista just an hour ago, but he left about 30 minutes later. Earlier today, I spoke with him, and he said that after visiting the voting centre, he'll be going home to be with his family to wait out the results in the comfort of his home. His supporters have also been asked to stay home, but his election agent has said that his supporters will be making their way to the PKMS headquarters in Geylang after the results are out. Now, PKMS is, of course, one of the opposition parties that make up the SDA, and this is the second time that Mr. Lim is contesting in this Punggol East, and the first time round in 2011 general election. He garnered about 4.5% of valid votes. And to improve his margin this time round, he's embarked on a different strategy by reaching out to voters online. In fact, throughout the 9 days of campaigning, we saw that the SDA did not hold any rallies. Instead, they released about 30 clips online where he addressed voters and brought up local issues of local and national interest. With the slogan, "Dedicated Local, Determined Leader," he raised issues like the need for more coffee shops, more childcare facilities for residents, as well as the need to improve healthcare services for the elderly. Well, I will try to get a soundbite from him and interview with him later in the night. So I'll update you. I'll fill you in with the updates later today.
All right, thank you so much, Asnita, for that. All right, looks like we have another colleague on the line, Saiful Bari Ismail. He's tracking the Reform Party, and Kenneth Jeyaratnam as well. Saiful?
The Reform Party candidate, Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam, arrived at the principal counting centre here at the North Vista Secondary School that you see behind me. He arrived about 1 hour earlier, driven by the party chairman, Mr. Andy Zhu. Now, Mr. Jeyaratnam is currently inside the North Vista Secondary School, the principal counting centre, witnessing the counting process. Now, he's accompanied by several of the Reform Party members, namely from the Central Executive Committee members. And I have here with me, Mr. Osman Sulaiman. He is a member of the Central Executive Committee and also a joint organizing secretary of Mr. Jeyaratnam's campaign. Now, Mr. Osman, the Reform Party has a very lean team, yet you run a very tight ship. It has been a very challenging 9 days of campaigning, yes?
Yes, it is indeed very challenging for us, as we are a new party. We run a lean team. Of course, there are challenges that we face, but all our members are very supportive. And I think that it goes to show that we can actually overcome difficulties together if we keep ourselves very tight.
Right, Osman, whatever the outcome of this by-election, what is the most significant takeaway for the Reform Party?
As mentioned, our party is still new. Okay, I guess this has been very positive for us. We have made the right impact to the voters, and they've also been aware that outside of election, We are actually championing for other issues, other citizen issues. And we have been warmly received by residents of Punggol East, and most importantly is that we do offer the voters a choice of candidate despite the popular sentiments.
Right, I've been speaking with Mr. Osman Sulaiman. He's a member of the Reform Party Central Executive Committee and also the Joint Organizing Secretary of Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam's campaign for the Punggol East by-election. Back to you.
Thanks very much for that, Saiful. And we are also receiving word from our reporters on the ground. One of them spoke to a PAP grassroots activist who told our reporter that the by-election margin could be tight and they would not be ruling out a recount.
All right. Residents of Punggol East were up and about early for the ballot. By about 5 p.m., 81% of eligible voters of Punggol East had cast their votes. Olivia Seong tells us about the action at the polling stations.
A queue started forming at this polling centre even before it opened. And once the ballot boxes were ready, voting got underway at 8 a.m. at 10 polling stations. Close to 31,650 Punggol East residents are expected to cast their vote in polling stations like these throughout the day, though many of them said they are here to vote early so they can carry on with the rest of the day's activities.
I'm trying to rush to work because I start at 11 o'clock. So I come down early and it's not so long queue at the same time.
The election time, we will always come early. Make it a time to come early, easier than to beat the crowd.
So I have to rush and then send my baby to my mother's house. Then after that, rush to work.
Special arrangements were made for those with special needs.
They are kind enough to give me the express lane, so I'm a bit faster.
Residents Channel News Asia spoke to said they took their vote seriously.
To me, it's me making my part for this country. So it's my vote that counts.
If there is an occasion where things have to change and they have to put in new candidates to vote and so on, well, you have to take part in it.
What has to be done has to be done. We are exercising our right that has been deployed to us by the government, and let's hope may the better person who may deliver the need of the people be the overall winners for the election.
The 4 candidates were spotted at various polling stations. Dr. Kopo Kun from the ruling People's Action Party, Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam from the Reform Party, Mr. Desmond Lim from the Singapore Democratic Alliance, and Ms. Li Lian from the Workers' Party made the rounds throughout the day to observe the voting process. After 9 days on the campaign trail, one of them will fill the post vacated in mid-December by Mr. Michael Palmer of the ruling People's Action Party following an extramarital affair and represent the ward in Parliament. Olivia Seong, Channel News Asia, Singapore.
Now, some 60 overseas Singaporeans were eligible to cast their votes in 9 polling stations worldwide. A handful of voters arrived at the Singapore consulate in Shanghai after doors opened at 8 a.m. local time. Ballots will be flown back to Singapore overnight.
Well, Singaporeans based in Hong Kong who were eligible to vote made their choice at the Consulate General Office in Admiralty, and the office was transformed into a voting centre and was from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Singapore-Hong Kong time. One voter, Victor Liao, who runs a family business in Guangzhou, made a special 2-hour train journey to Hong Kong to cast his vote.
Overall, I just hope that they can finish up the Rivervale Plaza as soon as possible, and also more childcare over there. Because it's quite a big problem for because my brother is also staying there, my sister also staying there. So they're having quite some problem previously finding a childcare center for their kids.
And let's turn now to Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies once more. Now, Gillian, just to pick up on what you said earlier about how the voter profile in Punggol East, they're middle to upper middle class. We were saying earlier 60% actually live in either 5-room or larger houses. So the issues that have come out like childcare, public transport, this would resonate with them. But I see that the opposition seem to be banking also on voters appreciating loyalty. I mean, the Workers' Party sending Ms. Li Lian, who contested in 2011, also SDA, Mr. Desmond Lim contesting for a second time for the single seat. Yeah. So, do you think it's a factor here in determining the voters' decisions on who to vote for?
Well, I think first off, we have to remember that the run-up to the by-election is a very short period. So if you're an opposition party and you know you have a very short time to make it, I think the best bet is to put someone in who's already been on the ground. I think that was the reason behind the choice of Miss Li Lien at WP. She did a great job. She got 41% in the last election. But remember, she said herself she managed to cover 60% of the estate. And then she set herself her target to go and cover 100%. So I think that is the first reason why you would choose somebody who's already been there. The second is that I think then they can actually, they've got a finger on their pulse from the last general election, and they can actually explicate what are the things that the residents want. But I think that you've seen in the Hastings, all the candidates know exactly what the residents want. I think the residents know that as well, and they are looking for someone who can actually deliver. So I think the two main parties in this contest, the PAP and the WP, because RP is a very young party and SDA actually didn't have a very high score the last time round, both are saying different things. First, PAP said, vote me, vote the person who can serve you best, and that they are the party that can deliver on all these facilities. They are the governing party. The WP is arguing, we are the party that can point out what has not been done. And of course, if they join up with the larger heartlands of the WP now, our Junit GRC, they'll be able to pull together and help out. So they're not, they're also promising things like childcare facilities, but they're highlighting how they've not yet been delivered. Why not? Since the last general election. And so they're coming from different angles, if you see what I mean.
You were talking about the opposition parties not having enough time to kind of prepare for this. There was some talk before that they might pool their resources together and maybe go up against the PAP. They didn't really quite do that. But seeing how we have 4 candidates running with 2, one from the SDA and one from Reform Party, how would that affect the final result of the PAP and the WP? Because a lot of people are also saying it's basically down to a two-horse race.
Yes, I think that what would have been interesting would be to see a contest where it was the PAP, WP, and the third party, which has been very well established, the Singapore Democratic Party. And I think that was the bit of excitement that got our hearts sort of in a flurry before nomination day, whether we'd actually see an opposition party of almost equal heft to the WP contest, and then you would have a 3-horse race where all the horses, will really have to work very, very hard. And remember, we talk about the by-election effect. If it were a 2-horse race, then you won't see the opposition split its support among various parties. And I think that's what the SDP was working very hard to do, to try and see if they could put together a unity candidate so that it would amount to a 2-horse race. Didn't happen, so we have a 4-horse race, but in fact the other 2 are relatively minor parties when you compare it to WP. I think that would be a fair comment that most people will accept.
So would you say that the PAP and the Workers' Party, these 2 parties actually have more at stake? I mean, is it the case that the other 2 smaller parties really have nothing to lose?
Well, that's true. But remember, Reform Party is a young party, so this is a very good outing for them to profile themselves. And I think that you saw the party campaigner just now say that they felt that they had a good run. So it's a very good way in which to build up the party machinery, to give some exposure, make sure that it's good exposure, and then gear up for the next general election. Fingers crossed, no more by-elections. So I think it's still useful for young parties to do this. SDA is trying to get itself together because it used to be very strong under the leadership of Chiam Si Tong, who broke away. And it also lost a very important fragment of the SDA original, which was the National Solidarity Party. So it's still in a bit of flux, but you see Desmond Lim as the main stalwart, and there he is again. He said he was back, though he not daunted by the general election result, where he lost his deposit, bigger and better. So we've seen him out there trying his utmost.
And of course, he has also said that if he does lose this one, he will be back again.
Why not? I think he's showing his determination. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Gillian. We'll speak to you later on. But for now, let's have a look at what else is making the news this hour. Gerard Lam is in the newsroom with the day's headlines. Gerard?
Yes, thanks, Dominic. Well, at least 22 people have been killed after clashes erupted in Egypt, this time not over the second anniversary of the country's uprising, but over death sentences handed down for the country's worst football violence. This was the uproar after the verdict was announced in a court in Cairo. 21 people were sentenced to death over last year's riot at a football stadium in Port Said. More than 70 people died in that incident, making it one of the world's worst football disasters. And in Port Said, where most of the condemned men come from, protesters rampaged through the streets today. Families of the accused tried to storm the prison where they're being held. Automatic weapons were used against police who responded with tear gas. The army has now been sent in and armoured personnel vehicles deployed. In Malaysia, a train has derailed and landed on its side, injuring some 6 people. The KL Express train was bound for Singapore, but derailed some 10 minutes before it reached the Kempah station in Johor State. According to the News Straits Times, an eyewitness said a train worker in his 50s sustained leg injuries and was trapped in the wreckage. As the derailment occurred in the middle of the jungle, rescuers face obstacles reaching the site. India is celebrating its 64th Republic Day with a grand parade in New Delhi. Celebrations were held under heavy security for the annual parade of military hardware, at which Bhutan's king was chief guest. India's President Pranab Mukherjee told rival Pakistan in his annual address to the nation on the eve of the celebrations that New Delhi's hand of friendship should not be taken for granted. Well, today also saw Australia Day celebrations with countless parades, festivals and concerts in Australian cities. Australia Day commemorates the arrival of a fleet of 11 British ships at Sydney Cove in 1788 to establish a penal colony. And the rush to be reunited with family and loved ones is on in China. The 40-day travel rush kicked off today as people in China travel back to their hometowns for the Lunar New Year holiday on February 10th. The festival is the most important holiday for the Chinese. Public transportation is expected to accommodate about 3.4 billion passengers nationwide this year. And in sports news, Victoria Azarenka has successfully defended her singles title, beating Lina in the Australian Open final. It was Lina who snatched the initiative early on, taking the first set 6-4. Azarenka then went into a 3-1 lead in the second set before Lina twisted her ankle. Azarenka later took a 2-1 lead in the third. The unfortunate Lina took a tumble a second time, twisted her ankle and took a knock to her head in the process. Lina returned after second medical timeout in the match, but she couldn't stop Azarenka from taking the set 6-3 to claim her second straight Australian Open title. And that is your World News update. It's back to you, Dominic and Sharon.
Thanks very much for that, Gerard, with the World News there. Now we're going to take a quick break, another one here. And we're about an hour and 45 minutes into vote counting, which is still underway after a by-election in Singapore.
That's right. And our reporters are also on the ground, and they'll have the latest on this developing story after the break. And welcome back to this special extended edition of Primetime Weekend. We're tracking the outcome of the Punggol East by-election right here in Singapore, and results are expected in less than half an hour's time.
Now, the candidates have been making their rounds at the counting centres to watch the votes being tallied, and Dr. Koh Po Koon, the candidate from the ruling People's Action Party, has now left the North Vista Secondary School vote counting centre. Now, he spoke to some of our reporters earlier, and he did acknowledge that the results are still too early to tell, and he will let it speak for itself. Our reporters have also been speaking to the PAP grassroots activists on the ground, and they've been telling our reporters that the election margin could be tight, and they're possibly not ruling out a recount.
Well, that's right. And we last saw Ms. Li Lian of the Opposition Workers' Party leaving the same vote counting centre as well. Well, her supporters from the Workers' Party are out in force at Block 322, Hougang Avenue 5. And our reporters on the ground say there were cheers as soon as WP veteran Li Yiping arrived.
Now, throughout this special, we'll be taking a closer look at each of the four candidates. The People's Action Party's Dr. Koh Poh Koon, Reform Party's Kenneth Jeyaretnam, Desmond Lim from the Singapore Democratic Alliance, and Ms. Li Lian from the Workers' Party. And we begin with the incumbent party, PAP's Dr. Koh, who has been described as a man with a plan.
And the 40-year-old colorectal surgeon is confident he'll be able to execute the plans proposed, including those aimed at benefiting the elderly and families with young children. May Wong, who's been following his campaign trail, reports.
Having more services to help senior citizens, building more childcare centres, and better transport services for the residents. Dr. Koh has emphasized these proposals and more throughout his 9 days of campaigning. If elected, he says he's determined to better reach out to the disadvantaged.
Having a certain criteria doesn't mean that it's going to be all-encompassing. And for those people who fall through the cracks, especially those who may be not good enough to receive aid, but actually they are actually pretty bad in the sense that they are stuck in between. They're not the worst, but they're not good enough. They're in a sandwich kind of level. And so we need to think about other things that can fill this gap, bridge this gap.
Wanting to bridge the gap with residents was what prompted Dr. Koh to share the story of his humble beginnings, saying he understands the hardships Singaporeans face.
The way to understand the person is to know what he's made of. You need to know where he came from. And that is my way of putting forward my life for residents to understand what makes me tick. And I think that has achieved some resonance with the residents.
Reaching out to residents, Dr. Koh was often seen campaigning alone. Even when Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong visited Punggol East to lend support to Dr. Koh, the candidate conducted his walkabout separately from Mr. Lee. That was a deliberate move, as he had said he wants to fight his own race.
For me, I'm just really trying to focus on what I need to do here, because at the end of the day, if you're not focused on residents' issues, no one's going to vote you anyway.
Dr. Koh has often stressed that he took on the call to serve because he wants to give back to society the benefits that he has reaped.
And let's check into Channel News Asia's May Wong, who is at the PAP branch office with the PAP supporters. May, any updates?
Indeed, I have, Sharon. In fact, I've got some indication to say that the PAP supporters who are accompanying Dr. Koh Poh Koon right now at the counting centres actually say the indications are looking up. So it seems that results are slowly coming in. Of course, this is not the official results, so don't take it at face value. I'm just letting you know that surrounding people are saying the indications are looking good, and that could possibly spell a positive sign for the People's Action Party. But I need to say that we still have to wait for the official results to come in. Dr. Koh Poh Koon, the PAP candidate, has been canvassing for votes over the last 9 days, hoping that residents will get to know him, hoping that residents will get to know what his plans are. And he has made the assurance and gave the promise to residents, saying that he will execute those plans and also fight for more services, fight for more facilities for the residents here within the constituency. Dr. Koh has said previously that he grew up, in a very difficult situation through hardship. He had to support his family. His father was a bus driver, and so he understands the difficulties that Singaporean families are going through. So we'll continue to keep that in terms of a lookout and bring you more details later.
Right, thanks for that, May. Let's turn now to Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies again. Now, since we're talking about the PAP's Dr. Koh Poh Koon right now, how successful do you think he's been in, painting this whole election strategy about him being a regular Joe from a humble background? How successful do you think that strategy has been?
Well, I think first he described himself, and he was hoping that that would convince voters that he can identify with them. That's the first point. And secondly, he talked about his story of his rise from, well, rags. I wouldn't call it riches, but at least having made good from a very humble background. So did Miss Li Lian. I think that what he went out to do was to enumerate the various things that residents needed quite quickly, but I'm sure he had very good help from his grassroots supporters. at the end of the day, he has all the support from the PAP bigwigs. And you've seen DPM Teo Chee Hian there. And of course, he rounded up his hustings period with the PM showing up at his final rally. So I think in this case, you've seen Dr. Koh out there, but he is not on his own. Though at various stages, he said, well, you can see I'm here on my own with just 2 people so that I can be more accessible. But I think in this campaign, different from the Hougang by-election, you've seen the party bigwigs come, weigh in on the party big policy issues, but actually take up the rostrum and speak, and you saw the PM actually doing that. So I think that, you know, he has, you know, the titans behind him.
Yes, you sort of pointed out this difference in the election strategy with the Hougang one, the Hougang by-election. Why do you think there is this difference? That's intentional, I suppose.
Well, I think parties learn as well. I think, you know, the PAP, generally reluctant to call by-elections in a single-member constituency, responded to the ground they call the Hougang one, and they've learned. And now they've grown, and they've also learned the lessons from there and brought it forward to Punggol East. So I think it was interesting, because they didn't start out by just saying we're only going to campaign on local issues. They connected it to national issues, where the opposition took them on or not addressing the needs of the elderly. You saw Gan Kim Yong weigh in and say that his party and his government are working hard to address the needs of the elderly. So Dr. Koh was very much supported from behind, I think, from the PAP's sort of learning on the go, on the job.
So it was a very finely balanced campaign for Dr. Koh, as well as support from the PAP.
Absolutely,
big
because
names.
Nor would he want to be overwhelmed and overshadowed by the party bigwigs. So I think this is a sort of what happens when you get the experience, you get the, you know, learn things on the ground, you see how people respond, and then you calibrate.
But, you know, having seen all the big names come out and all the big policy announcements, do you think that the stakes are much higher for the PAP, though?
Well, I think, you know, first off, it's a by-election, so they have to fight that by-election effect. And it would be a pity for them to lose 1 seat, but they already have 80 in the House. It's a big deal for the WP because they have 6 duly elected members, and to add 1 more to their team, I think they count it as a, you know, quite a victory. And not only that, that they'd have another woman on their team. So you can see that each party is desperately wanting to win this, and they've worked ever so hard on the ground and really met with the media and, you know, shared what they're on about.
All right, let's take a quick pause right here and take a closer look at the Workers' Party's Ms. Li Lian. Now, throughout the campaign, she promised to champion several issues, including improving amenities for young families and local transportation if elected into Parliament. Now, Hasnita Majid has more.
34-year-old sales trainer Li Lian is no stranger to Punggol East residents, having contested in the last general election in 2011. Then she garnered 41% in the polls in a 3-cornered fight. She said she relied on her experience and heartlander beginnings to woo voters.
I still believe in personal touch, you know, face-to-face, because, you know, people who know me always say that I'm a people person. So I really hope that, you know, I can reach out to as many residents as I can so that they can also feel me.
She highlighted one challenge faced by residents that is also close to her heart.
As someone who is looking at starting a family, I can empathize with the considerations and concerns that young couples and young families are facing. Concerns such as raising children in a time where the cost of living is going up, and the environment is becoming increasingly competitive, especially in schools.
She believes that the addition of another opposition member in Parliament will strengthen the party's voice.
With one more voice inside there, you know, an opposition voice or alternative voice inside there, we are able to better push them harder.
Party leaders and her husband gave full support and accompanied her on her walkabouts in the 9 days of campaigning. No woman opposition candidate has contested and won a single-seat constituency since 1965. Ms. Lee will carve a place in history for herself and the opposition if she wins this by-election. She will also be the second elected female opposition MP in post-independence Singapore.
And Channel News Asia's Imelda Saad is with the Workers' Party supporters who are gathered in Hougang near Punggol East. Imelda, what do you have for us? Imelda?
Well, I'm here at Hougang. You may be wondering why I'm here. Well, this is a stronghold of the Workers' Party. And of course, Hougang just borders the Punggol East constituency. Now, hundreds of Workers' Party supporters are gathered here in Hougang. You can hear them. They're very noisy. They've come here with drums, with whistles, with placards, with flags. And they've come from all over Singapore. Now, just to give you an idea of how important this by-election is to the Workers' Party, to the party, it's not just another by-election. They've pitched this as a mini referendum to the People's Action Party's performance in Parliament. And throughout the 9 days of campaigning, both the Workers' Party leaders and its candidate Li Lian, they've been urging voters to vote for Ms. Li to strengthen the voice of the Workers' Party in Parliament. Of course, Ms. Li is not a new face to Punggol East. She contested there in the last general election, garnering about 41% of valid votes, and that is one main reason why the Workers' Party had chosen her as their candidate, because of her familiarity on the ground. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Imelda. That's Imelda Saad over the Workers' Party's supporters. Now, let's bring the chat back to our studio guest, Ms. Dr. Gillian Koh. Now, Gillian, talking about the Workers' Party here, what do you make of their strategy at this by-election? Again, it's inevitable to compare it with their strategy during the Hougang by-election. Have they been more hard-hitting, you think?
Well, I think that you can see that in the Hougang election, there was a lot of sort of ground level, local level work being done, less discussion of the national issues. But here, in this Punggol East by-election, there's been a lot of discussion of the national level issues and how they relate to Punggol East. You know, I think what they've done is, both candidates have done this very well. They identified that a lot of the voters are in the sandwich class, which means that they're middle-aged and they have the burden of caring for the young, and they have the burden of caring for the old. And secondly, they're not poor enough to have lots and lots of aid from the state, but not rich enough to feel very comfortable. So you'll see that Ms. Li Lian, as well as the other candidates, have actually targeted their discussion about what's being done for the young, with the childcares and subsidies for childcare, and then the elderly. Can we do more in terms of the use of MediSave, transport sort of facilities so that it's more convenient to move around? So what you can do is, if you can take off the costs of looking after the young and old, then you're releasing the middle-aged people from these burdens, you see. So I think Ms. Li Lian has done that, and she, you know, her first salvo was to say, I'm somebody who is planning to be a mother. I know what the concerns are, and I'm here to really live the issues that you face. Represent them if you vote me.
We've also just seen the profiles of Dr. Koh and Ms. Li. How do you compare these two? I mean, in the eyes of the voters, you know, who's more appealing? I mean, on one hand, Dr. Koh has been tipped to be, you know, could be a potential office holder, and Ms. Li, you know, very much a very humble person who can relate to, you know, the everyday person.
Yeah, well, I think they're almost equally attractive. So what it is that you see them having to be wrapped around the idea of what their parties stand for. And you see that WP is really campaigned on the basis of being there, letting Ms. Li Lian and the party being in Punggol East so that they can represent the voters there and be a check on the PAP government. So they're really playing that card, that it isn't just, again, about issues, which they spent a lot of time on, but just as a political sort of role that they play. They want to be there to slap the co-driver if necessary. But you see the PAP responding, no less than the Secretary General of the PAP saying, well, what do you want? Do you want this sort of very conflict-ridden kind of divisive politics where you're slapping each other? Or do you want a sort of constructive politics where we can work together? And in fact, that was the tagline for the PAP by-election in Punggol East, that it was working together to make a better Punggol East. So that's the choice that voters face. It isn't just about the personalities, but what is the role you see each one of them playing based on where their parties stand.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Koh. We'll speak to you much more later in the program. And still to come, a quick check on the top stories around the world.
Now, plus all the latest from the Punggol East by-election in Singapore, so do stay with us. And the top story from Singapore this hour, it is its second by-election in less than a year. Sources say the Punggol East by-election is looking like a two-horse race between the People's Action Party and the opposition Workers' Party.
Well, the PAP's candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, has been visiting the two counting centres to observe the process. Dr. Koh, a surgeon by profession, is a fresh face in the single-seat constituency. And over the 9 days of campaigning, he has proposed plans to benefit the elderly and families with young children.
Of course, Dr. Koh has also left the announcement centre, and speaking to our reporters earlier, he did say that the results was too early to tell, so he said he will let the results speak for itself. Now, from the Workers' Party, Ms. Li Lian was among the first to arrive at North Vista Secondary School, one of the two counting centres. In the last general election in 2011, she picked up 41% of the vote in Punggol East.
Some 31,600 residents are eligible to vote in this by-election, and there are 59 registered voters overseas. All right, Channel News Asia's S. Ramesh is at the Counting Centre and Announcement Centre at North Vista Secondary School. Ramesh, what's the latest?
Well, there's a lot of developments going on here at the North Vista Secondary School. The Workers' Party candidate, Ms. Li Lian, has just arrived here again, probably after checking out the counting procedures at Rivervale Primary School. Ms. Lee just arrived about 5 minutes ago with another companion from the party back here at the North Vista Secondary School to probably have a second look at how the counting procedures are going on here. Now, Mr. Desmond Lim, the Singapore Democratic Alliance's candidate who is making a second go at the Punggol East single-member division, just left the counting centre, and just before he left, he told the media that whatever the results, his spirits would not be dampened. Well, you can read into that in many ways, but it probably will have to wait for the returning officer, Mr. Yam Ami, to make the official pronouncement as to how the vote count has turned out for each candidate. But looks like Mr. Desmond Lim didn't have any more to say than just saying that his spirits would not be dampened, whatever the final outcome of the Punggol East by-election is going to be. Well, this place here at the North Vista Secondary School is a hive of activity, not just for the media. I mean, being the main counting centre and with the candidates and their election agents walking in and out, it's also the centre of attraction for many residents staying around this area. You know, there's a condominium just opposite the secondary school, and a lot of people from the Pasir Ris Punggol East PRC are also here.
All right, thanks for that update, S. Ramesh at North Vista Secondary School. Now it's just over 2 hours since polling closed, and vote counting is still underway. Now, Channel News Asia's May Wong is at the People's Action Party branch office in the constituency. May.
Well, Sharon, over at Ramesh's place, he says that that was the centre of attraction among residents, given the fact that North Vista is one of the counting centres. But over here, where I'm at, it's a PAP kindergarten, which has been turned into an assembly centre for PAP grassroots supporters. And, well, I guess residents are outside milling around, but also staying at home watching television. In addition to that, if I can just roll some pictures of Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean, who arrived shortly, just a while ago, and he just came in to greet some of the grassroots activists out here, and also not speaking to any reporters because I think he wants to hold up any kind of comments until after the results are officially being announced. The candidates are still all out there, but for Dr. Koh Poh Koon, the PAP candidate, well, he has been fighting extremely hard. He has been walking around talking to residents during his campaign period and reaching out to them saying that he wants to up the services, improve the facilities here for the constituency. In addition to that, he also talked about how he will not just serve the people within Punggol East constituency, but also he's got a lot of plans, a lot of suggestions, to put to the ministers on a national level. And in fact, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong himself has said before that Dr. Koh has got potential to be an office holder once he's been assessed and deemed fit to be an office holder. But the fact that residents have been given, knowledge to say that Dr. Koh is being held for high office in the future. So that's something that they might want to consider.
All right, thank you so much, May, for that update. And it is time for us to take a look at other headline news today, and Gerard Lam is in the newsroom with the update.
Thanks, Dominic. Dominic, we are monitoring developments in Egypt where at least 22 people have been killed after clashes erupted in the capital, Cairo. Now, the clashes came about after death sentences were handed down for the country's worst football violence. This was the uproar after the verdict was announced in a court in Cairo. 21 people were sentenced to death about last year's riot at a football stadium in Port Said. In Port Said, where most of the condemned men come from, protesters rampage through the streets today. Families of the accused try to storm the prison to where they're being held. The army has now been sent in and armored personnel vehicles deployed. In Malaysia, a train has derailed and landed on its side, injuring some 6 people. Police said the 10-car train with 117 passengers on board had derailed as it was passing a forest near the Singapore border in the afternoon after 5 cars came unhooked from the train. Train services between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore's Woodlands checkpoint have been suspended. India is celebrating its 64th Republic Day with a grand parade in New Delhi. Celebrations were held under heavy security for the annual parade of military hardware, at which Bhutan's king was chief guest. India's President Pranab Mukherjee told rival Pakistan in his annual address to the nation on the eve of the celebrations that New Delhi's hand of friendship should not be taken for granted. North Korea has renewed its threat to carry out a third nuclear test. U.S. Research Institute 38 North points to these satellite images of the Punggol East site. The photos reveal that over the past month, roads have been kept clear of snow. North Korea could also be sealing the tunnel into a mountainside where a nuclear device would be detonated. The Punggol site, where previous nuclear tests were conducted in 2006 and 2009, but no time frame has been given for the third test. The threat comes in response to expanded UN sanctions over its December rocket launch. In Australia, a series of mini tornadoes has hit coastal towns in Queensland as the remnants of Cyclone Oswald were felt. At least 15 people were injured. 2 of the towns were declared disaster areas. Authorities are assessing the extent of damage. Residents in low-lying areas are warned about the possibility of flooding over the weekend. In sports news, Victoria Azarenka has successfully defended her singles title, beating Li Na in the Australian Open final. It was Li Na who snatched the initiative early on, taking the first set 6-4. Azarenka then went into a 3-1 lead in the second set before Li Na twisted her ankle. Azarenka later took a 2-1 lead in the third. The unfortunate Li Na took a tumble a second time, twisted her ankle and took a knock to her head in the process. Li Na returned after second medical timeout, but she couldn't stop Azarenka from taking the set 6-3 to claim her second straight Australian Open title. And that is your World News Update. It's back to you, Dominic and Sharon.
All right, thank you so much, Gerard, for that. And more to come on our top story, the by-election in Punggol East in Singapore.
You can get more of Channel News Asia's comprehensive coverage of the election online at channelnewsasia.com/Punggol East.
And it is time for us now to take another break, and we'll hear the official result first, right here on Channel News Asia.
And here's the latest on this evening's top story out of Singapore as we track the outcome of Punggol East by-election, the country's second such vote in less than a year. The candidates are wrapping up their rounds at the vote counting centres. We saw Ms. Li Lian of the Opposition Workers' Party leaving the North Vista Secondary School counting centre, and our reporters say the by-election is looking increasingly to be a two-horse race.
Well, of course, that's between Ms. Lee and the ruling People's Action Party's candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, who is contesting Punggol East ward for the first time. Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean has arrived at the Punggol East branch office of the ruling People's Action Party to watch the election outcome as it unfolds.
Now, our reporter on the ground also says that Desmond Lim of the Singapore Democratic Alliance thanked supporters, and he said, whatever the results, his spirit will not be dampened.
And right now, Channel News Asia's Imelda Saad is with the Workers' Party supporters. Imelda, what's the mood like over at where you are? Imelda?
Well, I can't really hear you, Dom, but it's really noisy here. Hundreds of Worker Party supporters have gathered here and they continue to stream here in Hougang constituency. Now, this is not Punggol East, but they've come here because Hougang is a stronghold of the Workers' Party and it borders Punggol East constituency. In fact, one of the supporters was seen holding a poster that said, Punggol East residents falling in love with you. So that's the extent of the support for Punggol East residents here in Hougang. If you remember, of course, they're all hoping that Workers' Party candidate Li Lian would take the Punggol East seat. She's not new to the single-member constituency. She's contested in the ward before, and she garnered about 41% of valid votes. And she's, of course, hoping to better her performance. I spoke to several residents during the 9-day of campaigning, and they say that what they look for in an MP is someone who's sincere, someone who would meet their needs. And, of course, Ms. Lee has addressed these issues. She says that if elected, she will look into having more childcare centres in the estate, having more hawker centres in the constituency, and of course ensuring the smooth running of the town council. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Imelda Saad at the Workers' Party supporters camp. Let's speak to our reporter Saiful Bari Ismail. Now, he is at the Reform Party supporter camp. Saiful.
Right. The Reform Party candidate for the Punggol East by-election, Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam, is still locked in the counting centre behind me at the North Vista Secondary School, while a few of the candidates are seen leaving the premise. Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam is still inside the counting centre with his election agent and chairman of the Reform Party, Mr. Andy Zhu. I've spoke with several of the Reform Party Central Executive Committee members who are standing outside the school, and the party sources have said that Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam is currently trailing behind the People's Action Party and the Workers' Party in the vote count. Now, how far Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam is behind them still remains to be seen. It's unclear right now, and reports are unconfirmed at this point in time. But party sources have said that Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam is indeed trailing behind the Workers' Party and the People's Action Party. As you can see, many people behind me, curious onlookers, presumably residents living in this area. They're very keen and to see what's the outcome of this by-election and to see who is going to represent them in Parliament. Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam has, throughout the 9 days of campaigning, has used his campaign slogan of "No more broken promises." We'll see whether residents will buy with that campaign promise. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Safu, for that report. And we continue our coverage of the Punggol East by-election with a closer look at Kenneth Jeyaratnam of the Reform Party. He says his race for Punggol East has shown the need for competition between parties in a democracy, and that is just as important as competition in the marketplace. Tan Chiu Yi reports.
Mr. Kenneth Jeyaratnam has promised to move to Punggol East, become a full-time MP, and donate 10% of his allowance to run community projects if he's elected. What the former hedge fund manager can't promise are million-dollar projects.
I don't have views as state resources or grassroots organizations. Neither can I leverage on a organization in a neighboring constituency. But I think the residents like our message. They know that I would be effective as an MP on their behalf.
He's also calling for childcare centres in every precinct and getting private bus operators to improve transport links in the single-seat ward. Early in the campaign, Mr. Jeyaretnam received death threats against his decision to contest. He said it was personally upsetting, but not a low point for him in the race.
It made me more determined to go on, because I'm not going to be deterred by threats.
Despite his criticisms of the governing People's Action Party as well as the opposition Workers' Party, he says he wants to be a constructive voice with policy alternatives in Parliament. For Mr. Jeyaretnam, the idea of opposition unity in Singapore may be far-fetched, but he says there can be solidarity on one point.
What we can do is be united in fighting against the obstacles that hamper the growth of alternative parties in Singapore, hamper the growth of an opposition and the emergence of democracy.
After 9 days of campaigning, Mr. Jeyaretnam does not see himself nor his SDA rival Desmond Lim as the underdogs. He says he's gunning for a surprise result.
Well, we're getting reports, actually reported on today, that there were reports that that Kenneth Jeyaretnam from the Reform Party had conceded defeat, but we're having reports from our reporters in Today newspaper that Kenneth Jeyaretnam says that it is complete fabrication, that he has not come out to make any announcement to that effect.
All right, let's turn now to our guest here in the studio, Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies right here in Singapore. We've heard from Desmond Lim speaking to reporters, and we've heard Ramesh say that Desmond saying whatever the results, his spirit will not be dampened. So when you hear something like that, how do you interpret it?
Well, I think that you've seen Desmond Lim being very sort of dedicated and determined. He knows, he's seen SDA in its former glory, so I think that he still has that vision. He's lived it before and he would like to revive that, so he's ever hopeful, which is something you need to be an opposition politician in Singapore.
But as far as the result, possibly, do you think he's more or less hinted at where he might end up for the night?
Well, let's see. I think we should wait for him to make a formal comment, but I think in our earlier discussion, we did say that SDA is not the party it used to be. It's much smaller, and given what happened in the general election, Mr. Lim actually lost his deposit. He scored 4.45% of the total valid vote. I think he knew that he would have to work extremely hard. He did, but it would still be a long shot.
Yeah, I mean, since we just had a look at the profile of Mr. Kenneth Jeyaretnam from the Reform Party, let's just quick question about him. He during the campaign, and he talked about pledging his becoming a full-time MP, pledging part of his allowance to the needy, as well as even moving to the area of electorate. Now, he's not been the first one actually to use something like that. So, how effective is something like this in an election?
Well, I think it's useful to have a message like that to demonstrate that you're dedicated, that you're really, really committed to doing the job. Very few MPs actually offer to move to the estate, and he has. So clearly it's a message that sticks. It's quite useful. I think he also campaigned on the fact that he is his father's son. So you see that the iconic image of JBJ there in the backdrop at his rallies. He also, referred to his father's legacy quite a lot. He also said that he had given views to WP many, many years ago, and that some of the ideas of Workers' Party today are something that he offered then. So he's trying to sort of establish his credentials, that he's not a newbie. He's sort of got his father's sort of legacy, and he'd like to carry on, which, remember, was part of WP. Another important point was that he started off wanting to work towards opposition unity at the start with WP. He revealed that later, but now he sort of, towards the end, said that it's okay. different political ideologies, different parties, let us fight.
All right. We'll continue our discussion later in the program. Right now, Hasnita Majid is trailing the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim. Hasnita?
Yes, Dom, I'm back here outside North Vista Secondary School, where we were told that SDA's Desmond Lim will be. But throughout the night, there's been conflicting reports about his whereabouts and whether he will be giving an interview to the media. The latest we've heard from his election agent is that he will be issuing an official statement via SMS once the results are out. Now, we do know that Mr. Lim garnered about 4.5% of valid votes in the last general election, and whether he will get that much or not, or whether he's still in the race for the Punggol East constituency, that's still up in the air. Now, Mr. Lim started very upbeat about this election, going with the slogan, dedicated, local and determined leader. He also championed local issues like more services for the residents and also improved healthcare services for the elderly. He also called on voters not to be swayed by big party names, as this cannot guarantee loyalty and performance. Of course, there was also the issue of him paying his supporters to help him with his campaign. Mr. Lim had defended action, saying that it's common for parties to engage paid assistance to help with groundwork. We will still try and get reaction from Mr. Lim later tonight. So when we have that, we will go back to you, Dom.
All right, thank you so much, Hasnita, for that. And still to come, more headline news from Asia and from around the world.
And of course, we are still waiting for the results of the Punggol East by-election. We are going to keep you updated with our reports from the ground. And you're watching a special extended edition of Primetime Weekend. We're tracking all the developments of the Punggol East by-election in Singapore, as well as other headlines from around the world. And of course, we are still waiting results from the Punggol East by-election. It's been about 2.5 hours since polling closed. Gerard Lam, meantime, has more on what's making news this hour.
That's right, Sharon. Our top story takes us to Egypt, where at least 26 people have been killed after clashes erupted there. This time, not over the second anniversary of the country's uprising, but over death sentences handed down for the country's worst football violence. This was the uproar after the verdict was announced in a court in Cairo. 21 people were sentenced to death over last year's riot at a football stadium in Port Said. And in Port Said, where most of the condemned men come from, protesters rampaged through the streets today. Families of the accused tried to storm the prison to where they're being held. The army has now been sent in and armoured personnel vehicles deployed. India is celebrating its 64th Republic Day with a grand parade in New Delhi. Celebrations were held under heavy security for the annual parade of military hardware, at which Bhutan's king was the chief guest. India's President Pranab Mukherjee told rival Pakistan in his annual address to the nation on the eve of the celebrations that New Delhi's hand of friendship should not be taken for granted. Well, today also saw Australia Day celebrations with countless parades, festivals and concerts in Australian cities. Australia Day commemorates the arrival of a fleet of 11 British ships at Sydney Cove in 1788 to establish a penal colony. Well, technology giant Apple has lost its position as the world's most valuable company. Its stock ended down over 2% early today, giving it a market capitalization of $413 billion. Oil titan ExxonMobil regains top spot with a market cap of $418 billion. Apple shares hit a record high last September, but there are fears over the company's future growth, with some analysts saying it has lost its edge in innovation. Its shares took a beating this week after reported disappointing iPhone sales. The rush to be reunited with family and loved ones is on in China. The 40-day travel rush kicked off today as people in the world's most populous nation travel back to their hometowns for the Lunar New Year holiday on February 10th. The festival is the most important holiday for the Chinese. Public transportation is expected to accommodate about 3.4 billion passengers nationwide this year. One sport item, Victoria Azarenka has successfully defended her singles title, beating China's Li Na in the Australian Open final. It was Li Na who snatched the initiative early on, taking the first set 6-4. Azarenka then went on to a 3-1 lead in the second set before Li Na twisted her ankle. Azarenka later took a 2-1 lead in the third. The unfortunate Li Na took a tumble a second time, twisted her ankle and took a knock to her head in the process. Li Na returned after second medical timeout, but she couldn't stop Azarenka from taking the set 6-3 to claim her second straight Australian Open title. And that is your World News Update. Dominic and Sharon, it's back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Gerard. Well, back to our top story out of Singapore tonight. We're waiting for results from the Punggol East by-election. Vote counting started after polls closed at 8 p.m. and sources say the Punggol East by-election is looking like a two-horse race between the People's Action Party and the opposition Workers' Party.
Now, Mr. Desmond Lim from the Singapore Democratic Party and the Reform Party's candidate Kenneth Jeyaretnam say they have not conceded defeat, contrary to media reports. The PAP's candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, has been visiting the two counting centres to observe the process. PAP supporters are gathered at the party's branch office in Punggol East.
Well, some supporters of the opposition Workers' Party are cheering on its candidate, Ms. Li Lian, at a coffee shop in Hougang Avenue 5. Well, there are about 31,600 registered voters in Punggol East, and this is Singapore's second by-election in less than a year.
And let's turn the focus now on the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim. Now, we heard earlier that he has said he has not conceded defeat, of course, despite media reports saying that he has. Now, Mr. Desmond Lim says he wants to continue engaging Punggol East residents even after the by-election, and throughout the 9-day hustings, he kept his campaign budget on a tight leash and held rallies online instead. Dylan Low with more.
Compared to candidates from the bigger political parties, the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Secretary-General had a relatively low-key campaign. Desmond Lim decided to forego outdoor rallies, choosing instead to tap on technology to spread his message. Mr. Lim video recorded his rallies and put them online.
It's about innovative, and it's about how you optimize your resources and put in the better deployments.
Mr. Lim said his approach had been very consistent. In the battle for hearts and minds in the Punggol East by-election, he revived promises made in the 2011 general election. Mr. Lim pushed for the improvement of infrastructure and addition of facilities to the single-seat ward. These included
hawker centre, bicycle tracks, childcare centre, distress corner, coffee corner.
On the national front, he proposed that the housing board sell homes to low-income Singaporeans and young married couples at cost price. Mr. Lim was also dissatisfied with the state of play in Parliament. He said it was not enough to have both the ruling People's Action Party and the opposition Workers' Party representing Singaporeans' interests.
The parliaments need a diversified voice and need a third party to went in to actually counter-check on them, and looking at the whole policies, looking at the cost.
Online chatter alleging that his supporters were being paid to assist in campaigning had threatened to derail his campaign. His party responded by saying that there was no crime in paying for assistance during the hustings. Mr. Lim continued the door-to-door approach with his assistants, believing it was the best way to get through to voters.
All right, let's turn our attention now to Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies here in Singapore. We've just saw the profile of Desmond Lim. He kind of conducted a very different campaign strategy altogether, going online and posting his rally speeches, in videos on YouTube. Do you think that was effective?
Well, I think first off, he must have been comfortable with the medium. He is an IT engineer after all. Secondly, he's a small party, so he may have limited resources. He's sent it all as a deposit to actually contest. Third, he is quite he's very approachable. You've seen that he's gone down on the ground as well. So it isn't that he's hiding behind a computer screen. He said that for some reason, he says this is his 4th time round. He obviously has been with SDA, and they've campaigned in 2006 in that area, 2011 in that general area, as well as for him in particular in Punggol East. And this is, at least I counted, 3rd time. He says 4th time round. So he's clearly very determined. He says that he is quite au fait with how to run a town council. So he's trying to tell you trying to tell the voters that he's an experienced hand. I think that people appreciate that dedication.
Yeah, but I mean, in the last contest in Punggol East, when he also contested, he garnered 4.5% of the votes and lost his election deposit. Now, he needs 12.5% in order not to lose his election deposit again. Now, that's he needs to increase his margin by at least 8 percentage points, and that's quite a tall order. So why do you think he's actually doggedly going ahead and contesting over and over again in this particular ward?
Well, I think that's his commitment. He says he's dedicated to the cause. He says that, remember, SDA is the party that has that tagline, "You have a choice." In 2006, that was their tagline. So I think he, like Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam, believes that he should be there to offer a choice. Actually, come to think of it, all 4 candidates said that, including the People's Action Party, and said, we're here, we're happy, and we welcome choice. So I think that's what he's sort of focused on. He's clearly a Democrat, and he'd like to offer himself as a choice.
But if he loses badly again this time round, let's say, what do you think is the future for his party, SDA?
Well, as I said, they're really trying to find their feet now, because they've not only lost SPP, they had lost NSP. They're much smaller. So they really probably have to do quite a lot of strategic thinking and really see if they can attract other sort of talent, build it up again with, collaboration with other parties. He's clearly one candidate that has ended the hustings by saying that he still believes in collaboration with other opposition parties.
All right, thank you so much, Gillian. We'll talk to you later on in the show. And of course, you can get more of Channel News Asia's comprehensive coverage of the Punggol East by-election online at channelnewsasia.com/Punggol East.
Well, still to come, vote counting is underway for the Punggol East by-election in Singapore. So our reporters on the ground will have the latest on that developing story. So just join us after the break.
Welcome back. You're watching a special extended edition of Primetime Weekend. We're tracking the outcome of the Punggol East by-election here in Singapore. And the ruling People's Action Party's candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, has been visiting the 2 counting centres to observe the process. PAP supporters are gathered at the party's branch office in Punggol East to watch the outcome of the vote.
Now, of course, we also saw earlier that Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean also arrived at the PAP branch office as well. Now, supporters of the Opposition Workers' Party were cheering on its candidate, Ms. Li Lian, at a coffee shop in Hougang Avenue 5, which is in a constituency held by the Workers' Party.
The Reform Party's candidate, Kenneth Jayaratnam, has denied reports that he's conceded defeat. Mr. Jayaratnam says that those reports are, and I quote, complete fabrication, and that he hasn't made any statement.
And on the part of the Singapore Democratic Alliance, a party representative says that its candidate, Desmond Lim, is heading home to be with his family. Mr. Lim thanked his supporters and said that whatever the result, his spirit will not be dampened. He also asked for privacy.
All right, we will go live now to our reporter on the ground, Imelda Saad. Imelda, what do you have for us?
Well, Dom, as the hours tick by, the Workers' Party supporters here in Hougang, which is just next to Punggol East constituency, they're getting a little bit more anxious, a little bit more excited, and as you can hear, a little bit more noisy. And I spoke to a couple of supporters earlier on, and they're quite confident that the Workers' Party candidate, Li Lian, is doing quite well, and that she may just have a strong chance at taking the Punggol East seat. Now, of course, Ms. Li has run quite a good campaign, she said. She said that she managed to hit all 127 blocks at Punggol East, and residents have warmed up to her. She's not new to the ward at all. She's a familiar face. That was one of the main reasons why the Workers' Party picked her again as the candidate for Punggol East, having contested in the same ward in the last general elections. She's also a young married woman, and a lot of the residents residents in Punggol East are made up of young families, and Ms. Lee has said that she can empathize with the struggles of a lot of the residents in Punggol East. And she said that if elected, she would also look into bringing in more amenities to the estate, things like more childcare centres, more hawker centres. And apart from that, she's also hoping to raise some national issues in Parliament, things like, you know, the struggles that young families face in Singapore and also the elderly. So she's hoping that she would be voted in Parliament so that she can be that additional Workers' Party voice in Parliament. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much, Imelda. And some breaking news. Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim says he has conceded defeat, and he said he'd like to thank his supporters and added that he ran in the election to keep the SDA flame alive.
So now that's the news just in. Of course, let's move on to hear from our reporter at the PAP branch office, where supporters of the People's Action Party are gathered. May?
Right, Sharon and Dom. Well, I'm over here at the People's Association, the PAP kindergarten over here, which is actually set out to be a room because later on we can expect a news conference by Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean as well as PAP candidate Dr. Koh Poh Koon. Behind me, they're actually huddled in a room right behind me, behind this poster over here, waiting for the official results to be announced. When Dr. Koh Poh Koon actually walked back into this kindergarten earlier from the accounting centre, he was actually smiling, not speaking to reporters, but he had a smile on his face before he actually went right into the room. The mood here is rather somber, I must say. I mean, you have a lot of the grassroots activists gathering together, whispering to each other, looking at their mobile phones and checking on what the results might be or what kind of an indication they might be getting. Unfortunately, we still don't know what the results are right now. We're going to have to wait for that. But very soon, we will be bringing you a live news conference, which will be hosted by Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean as well as Dr. Koh Poh Koon himself, the PAP candidate. But from the very get-go, the PAP has often said that this is going to be a close fight, it's going to be a keen contest, and they're not going to take anything lightly. Sharon and Dom.
All right, thanks for that update, May. Now, of course, what is confirmed, though, is one of the candidates has conceded defeat, and he is Singapore Democratic Alliance's Mr. Desmond Lim. Now, in conceding defeat, he said that he was going to thank his supporters. He also said that he had run in the election to keep the SDA flame alive.
That's right. And we have lots more live reports from our reporters on the ground. I believe we have S. Ramesh standing by. Ramesh?
Well, I'm here at the announcement center at the North Vista Secondary School. As you can see behind me, this is the rostrum where the returning officer, Mr. Yam Ami, will be making that much-awaited announcement that Singaporeans are waiting for, who is the winner of the Punggol East by-election. Although there is no indication when he will be coming out, but this is where the announcement will be made. Now, the North Vista Secondary School has been a hive of activity with the candidates toing and froing between the two counting centers to check on the progress of the counting process here for the by-election. We know that Dr. Koh Poh Koon is back at the PAP headquarters, at the PAP center, and Ms. Lee Lim was seen walking around the car park just now, a short while ago before I came here into the announcement center. We do not know whether she is still inside here or whether she has left the counting center. Mr. Kenneth Jeratnam, I believe, is still inside here in this counting center. Well, the North Vista Secondary School activity has also attracted a lot of residents from adjoining blocks, although they are living in the Pasir Ris Punggol GRC and are not involved in the voting process. They have been keen to find out what's going on. And so we will know in a short while the result of the Punggol East by-election.
All right, thanks for that, S. Ramesh at the Announcement Centre at North Vista Secondary School. Let's have a quick chat with Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies. Now, Gillian, we just heard that about Mr. Desmond Lim's decision to concede defeat. What do you make of that?
Well, I think that we knew it was a long shot. He really scored under 5% the last time. I'd love to see the outcome and see whether he was able to better that. Clearly, he feels himself as a steward of the SDA brand, and he's done that. I think in his final words in the hustings, saying that he believes in opposition unity, that is a very important message for SDA because they're an alliance of different parties, and it's completely different from what the other opposition parties in this race have said.
All right, we have to keep it there. We have to go to one of our reporters on the ground, Saiful Bari Ismail. He's tracking developments with the Reform Party. Saiful?
Right, the candidate for the Reform Party for the Punggol East by-election, Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam, is still inside the counting centre here at North Vista Secondary School, which is right behind me. Party sources say that Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam will stay inside the counting centre until the announcement of the official results. As you have heard earlier in some reports of Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam refuting claims that he has conceded defeat. But I'm hearing also from party sources saying that the Reform Party is trailing behind the People's Action Party and the Workers' Party, and how big a margin that is still remains to be seen. But I'm also hearing from party sources that Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam might lose his election deposit. We'll have to wait for the official confirmation when that happens. There's no Reform Party supporters here at North Vista Secondary School. All I see behind me and then also in front of me on both sides of the road are just curious onlookers. They just want to find out the results of this by-election and who will represent them in Parliament. Back to you.
All right, thanks for that, Saiful. And let's listen in from our reporter who's been tracking the SDA's Desmond Lim, Hasnita Majid. Hasnita.
Hi, Sharon. Yes, I'm on the way to meet Mr. Desmond Lim right now, and we are on our way to his house. Earlier just now, he spoke to us, and he said over the phone that he has conceded defeat, and he ran to keep the SDA flame alive, and he'd like to thank his supporters who has, in Punggol East, who has supported him up till now. Sharon, I'll have more for you later.
All right, thanks for that, Hasnita.
Well, it looks like it is time for us to take another short break as we wait for the results from the Punggol East by-election and be the first to hear from the returning officer right here on Channel News Asia. And welcome back. You're watching a special extended edition of Primetime Weekend. We're still waiting for the results from the Punggol East by-election right here in Singapore.
Now, Mr. Desmond Lim from the Singapore Democratic Alliance says he has conceded defeat. He ran a rather low-key campaign compared to the other three candidates. And in the last GE in 2011, he lost his election deposit when he got just 4% of the votes back then. Now, he has released an official statement following conceding defeat. Now, he said it had been a fast but hard race to the end, and he said entering this contest he was well aware of the risks and the challenges, but it was something the SDA had to do to keep its political flame alive. He also added that the results had not dampened him, nor the SDA, his party. Now, he said it only meant that they would have to work harder and fight harder when the next contest comes, and he also thanked the Punggol East for their support nonetheless.
Well, the opposition Workers' Party, meanwhile, is more upbeat. They're confident that their candidate, Ms. Li Lian, will win this contest. Ms. Li will be hoping to improve on her result back in 2011 when she took 41% of the vote in Punggol East.
Now, from the People's Action Party, supporters are gathered at the branch office in the constituency to watch the outcome of the vote. That is where the PAP and its candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, will give their media conference later.
Well, polls closed at 8 p.m. and the ballots were sent to 2 counting centres. Returning Officer Yamami will announce the outcome.
All right, let's have a quick chat with Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies again. Now, it's about almost 3 hours since polling closed. what would you say is going on right now? Any possibility of a recount given, 3 hours?
Well, it's 32,000 votes. It's not a lot, so we would have expected the results within maybe 2 hours. Perhaps there is a recount going on. We did say that it was a very close fight, too close to call, actually. I know people were taking sort of bets on what's the probability of a recount. A recount happens when the margin between the top and the second candidate is within 2% of the total valid vote. And in this case, in Punggol East, we're looking at about 640, something around that number in terms of margin, which, so we have to see.
Now, the general belief is that, usually when there are more candidates contesting for a seat, the possibility of the PAP actually losing it is actually lower. Usually that was the belief. But what has changed in the political climate now, given that, even the PAP has acknowledged it's going to be a close fight?
Well, no, I think that we thought that if it was going to be a multi-cornered fight, with several opposition parties of similar heft or close to each other, then they would split the vote among Punggol East residents for the opposition. In this case, we saw, for instance, the Singapore Democratic Party dropping out because they said that they were responding to views on the internet and in the public that they ought not to split the vote. So they bowed out, but it then left Workers' Party and two smaller minor parties. So in effect, I think most commentators would agree it became pretty much a two-horse race. So you didn't have the case where you had multiple opposition parties splitting the opposition vote. And you really almost had sort of battle among two parties, the PAP and WP.
Right, for our viewers watching this, we are still awaiting official results, which we are expecting any time. But in the meantime, Jillian, let's continue the conversation. Looking at the margin last time, the PAP had something like 55% of the vote and the Workers' Party 41%. What about this time? Do you think, how close do you think we'll get?
Well, in terms of votes, in the general election in 2011, the margin was something to the order of 4,600 votes. It's not a lot. It's not a lot. Could have been bigger, but that was what you needed to kind of flip over. So if you were, say, working hard for the Workers' Party, that's the number that you wanted to shift to your side. And then, as I said, because it's a by-election, that would be easier. People are willing to give a second, third look at an opposition party. And as I said, in this case, we had two minor parties and WP, which is head and shoulders above the rest. They have, after all, 6 duly elected members of parliament and 2 NCMPs. So they're actually the leading opposition party.
All right, we have to stop you there. Looks like... Sorry, we were getting some conflicting instructions.
Sure.
Sorry, continue.
So that's the problem. You don't have the situation where you have two very strong opposition parties splitting the vote. And so I think in this case, as we said, it's really the PAP fighting against the by-election effect.
Right.
Now, of course, just a reminder that we are currently waiting for the results, for the returning officer to come and make the announcement of the results, and we're sort of expecting it.
And you can imagine it can be quite close, because in the general election in 2011, Potong Pasir flipped from being held by Chiam Si Tong to Mr. Sito Ipin, who had been trying multiple times to win that over for People's Action Party. And Mr. Sito Ipin actually won by 114 votes. It can be, a hair's breadth separating the leader from the second contestant. So, and when it comes to a recount, you have party election agents for each party going through every single ballot paper, trying to make sure that each is correctly counted for their party or against their party.
But do you think overseas votes will count towards the result?
59 of them, let's see. I did say it could be a hair's breadth, and then we'd be back again tomorrow to see what the final result might be. But let's see. Yeah, I think it's really too close to call. I'm sure that's what's happening at the election centre at the moment.
So you're guessing that there is really currently a recount going on?
That's my guess at this time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask, you know, whoever wins this by-election, what do you think will be the priorities for the winning candidate?
Well, I think in the case of WP, we know that before the election, there was a controversy about town councils, town council management. They are very keen to show that they can do a good job managing a town council. They now have Aljunied GRC, they have Hougang SMC, and if they win, they will want to pull it all together, and they say, we're now one big happy family and enjoy economies of scale, work very hard.
Okay, we have to stop you right there because we understand that the returning officer, Mr. Yamami, is approaching the podium.
2013. Result for the electoral division of Punggol East. Kenneth Andrew Jeyaretnam, the Reform Party, 353 votes. Koh Po Kun, People's Action Party, 12,856 votes. Lee Li Lian, the Workers' Party, 16,038 votes. Desmond Lim Bak Chuan, Singapore Democratic Alliance, 168 votes. Rejected votes, 417. Total votes cast, 29,832. The local votes counted for the electoral division of Punggol East are conclusive of the results. Pursuant to Section 49, Subsection 7E, Paragraph A of the Parliamentary Elections Act, I declare Lee Li Lian of the Workers' Party as the candidate elected for the electoral division of Punggol East.
Heard from the returning officer Yam Ami that the Workers' Party and Lee Li Lian has won the by-election at Punggol East with more than 16,000 of the votes. Dr. Koh from the PAP, 12,856. Let's go to Imelda Saad now for more reaction on the ground. Imelda? Imelda, can you hear us?
And of course, Imelda is at the Workers' Party camp where the supporters are gathered. Imelda. Imelda, can you hear us?
Well, this is a historic day indeed for Workers' Party. The supporters here in Hougang, they're chanting the party's name and they're just absolutely exuberant. Of course, this just means that the Workers' Party has one more candidate in Parliament, and Lee Li Lian is of course also the first women opposition candidate to have won a single member constituency since 1965, and she's the second opposition woman in Parliament as well. So a victory for the Workers' Party. This is the second time that the Workers' Party has wrested control of a seat from the ruling People's Action Party. If you remember the last general election, the Workers' Party too took control of Aljunied GRC from the PAP. So as a member of Parliament for Punggol East, Ms. Lee has said that her immediate task would be to see to the smooth running of the Punggol East Town Council. She's also pledged to look into some of the amenities for residents there, looking into more childcare centres in their estate, more hawker centres, for example. She's also said that she wants to be a strong alternative voice in Parliament, raising national issues such as the plight of young families in Singapore and also the elderly. So Ms. Lee definitely has a lot to prepare as she enters Parliament. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thank you there, Imelda, for that update. Just to update our viewers watching, just a quick calculation of the numbers that we have gotten. Lee Li Lian from the Workers' Party got 16,038 votes out of a voting population of about 31,600. That works out to be about just about 50% of the votes. Let's go to May Wong now for more reaction from the PAP camp. May?
Well, Dom, the mood here is extremely somber. Just a while ago, when the returning officer, Yam Ami, announced on television that the Workers' Party has won, well, there was a polite round of applause from the PAP supporters here at the PAP kindergarten hold-up area. Well, we still have not heard from Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean or Dr. Koh Poh Koon himself, the PAP candidate, because they are huddled in a room within the location right now. So we're waiting for them to come out with a news conference, waiting for them to address the media. Right about 50 or so reporters, cameramen and photographers are eagerly waiting for that to happen. I believe in the back room they're trying to gather their thoughts, they're trying to gather, some kind of a response to the media questions which they will be flooded with later on.
All right, thanks very much for that. Mei Wong reporting it to us from the PAP camp. Now let's have another look at the results that was just announced. Of course, the winning party, Workers' Party, with its candidate, Ms. Li Lien. Now, these are the 4 candidates that had contested, and these were the vote numbers for each party. Ms. Li Lien garnering 54.52% of the votes, followed by the PAP's 43.71%. Now, if you remember, Ms. Li Lien garnered 16,038 votes compared to the PAP's 12,856 from the PAP. There's a difference about 3,182 votes between the two top candidates. Of course, the Reform Party with 353 votes, and the Singapore Democratic Alliance with 168 votes, which means that the candidates from these two parties would have lost their election deposits.
All right, let's get some analysis from our in-studio guest, Koh. Was this result what you expected?
Well, the margin is actually 10% of, well, more than 10% for the WP. So it wasn't all that close. It wasn't by a hair's breadth. I think that's what we were talking about before Mr. Yamami came out. So clearly they've swapped. WP has 54%, whereas the PAP had 54% in GE 2011. Clearly the by-election effect kicked in. But Ms. Li Lien was also a very attractive candidate. I think she was not just cognizant of the local issues. She'd been there before, but she also engaged at the national level. She had the full support and presence of her party. Clearly, as we said, also had the support of the party, and you had the Prime Minister stumping for Dr. Koh. But we always knew that it's very hard to contest in a by-election when you're the governing party and been there for 50 years.
But what tipped it over for the Workers' Party and Ms. Li? What were some of their, unique selling points, if you will?
Well, actually, I visited the rallies, of course, some online and live, and you hear the WP saying that when the candidate in Punggol East is campaigning, she meets and they meet people who are in Aljunied, who are in Hougang. So the Workers' Party is actually moving through contiguous areas because they know that these political connections thrive on the social connections, on the sharing of the stories and things like that. Now, why didn't the PAP have that kind of effect? Clearly, they are very rock and solid in Pasir Ris, Punggol. This SMC was carved out of it. Right. They were not as colourful, I think, and they didn't emphasize that sort of just historical kind of people-to-people connection. It's interesting because this is a new town. There would be new people, they've not been there for 50 years. But really, that's what the WP is saying. We're now, you're close to our WP heartlands. We're connected, come and join us.
Now, would you just really put it down to the by-election effect, or is this representative of general ground sentiment, possibly against the PAP? And would the demographics of this particular constituency have anything to do with it?
Well, I think this constituency is not representative of Singapore by any means. I think that, as we said, about 60% live in larger flats. They are a younger group. They are the sandwich class, they are middle class. It's not representative, but what it could be is a harbinger of things to come, because a large part of Singaporeans are sort of, advancing, progressing, and they have a sense that they are part of the middle class. And the question we ask is, people who try to study political trends is, what do people who move into those groups really feel about politics? When we did our survey at IPS, we found that the tendency to want a higher level of political pluralism increases at a higher level of socioeconomic class. So people who tend to be better housing, have professionals, would tend to value the presence of the opposition in order to keep the governing party lean and mean. So it's not always a vote against the PAP, but it's a vote for good governance. We need all of them to pull together, work together for the good of Singapore.
All right, we'll continue the discussion in just a moment, but for now, we go to Wong Siu Ying. She's at the Workers' Party headquarters at Side Awi Road. Siu Ying?
Yes, Dom, Sharon, I am now at the Workers' Party's headquarters now at Side Awi Road. Now, just moments ago, when the announcement was made about the victory for Workers' Party, some party members here in the meeting room burst into cheers and they hugged each other. It was before that, it was quite tense. There were a lot of rumors, speculations around who has won and whether the Workers' Party, whether they are leading. So when the confirmation came, there was loud cheers. Everyone was really happy and excited. Now we are waiting for the party leadership and also Ms. Lee Li Lian herself to join us later for a press conference. I'll have more details on that press conference later.
All right, we also have S. Ramesh, who is standing by for an update. Ramesh, what do you have for us?
Well, here outside the North Vista Secondary School, where the results were just announced a short while ago by Returning Officer Yam Army, the crowd has really swelled. They are probably looking out for Lee Li Lian, whether she's going to come out from the school or if she has left. So there are also some supporters here of the Workers' Party with Workers' Party umbrellas cheering on the victory of the Workers' Party in the Punggol East by-election, which was announced a short while ago. And of course, Mr. Kenneth Jeyaretnam left a short while ago. We know that he has lost his deposit as a result of the results in this election. Well, as you can see that, the Workers' Party supporters are behind me. They are cheering the victory of Ms. Lee Li Lian here at the North Vista Secondary School. And we will definitely be hearing more from my colleagues, Imal Asad and the other reporters who are at the various locations where the Workers' Party supporters have all gathered to cheer on Ms. Lee Li Lian, who has won the Punggol East by-elections by about 4,000 votes. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Ramesh. Now we just received a statement from Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong following the release of the Punggol East by-election results, and he said that he had called a by-election in Punggol East to fill the vacancy created when Mr. Michael Palmer resigned as MP, and he said he respected the choice of Punggol East voters and congratulated Ms. Lee Li Lian and the Workers' Party for winning this by-election. Now, the Prime Minister also said that the PAP had fielded a good candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, and that he showed character and courage in contesting the election, and he also did the PAP proud. Now, Prime Minister Lee also said that clearly many voters were impressed by the Dr. Koh's sincerity and commitment, but unfortunately there was not enough of them for him to win. Now, he also thanked all those who voted for Dr. Koh and the PAP, and especially all the activists and volunteers who fought so hard in this campaign. Now, in a by-election, the Prime Minister said the governing party candidate always has a tougher fight, and that voters see it as choosing an MP, not choosing a government, and opposition parties encourage them to do so.
Well, the Prime Minister also said that the government must continue to govern and the plans and programs are already in progress and they are geared towards the longer term and will take time to show results. PAP, he says, will continue to work to improve the lives of Singaporeans and present the report card for voters to judge in the next general elections. And Mr. Lee has also spoken to Mr. Koh and he's thanked him and his team for their hard work for fighting a spirited campaign. Dr. Koh, he says, is naturally disappointed, but in good heart, and he's keen to continue serving in any role that the party decides. And the Prime Minister says he intends to field him again in a future election so that he can be part of his team to serve Singapore. And he ended by saying that now that the Punggol East by-election is over, we should now refocus on national issues. And and he says we have a heavy agenda coming up. The white paper on population will soon be debated in Parliament, and Budget 2013 is less than a month away. So Mr. Lee says, let us come together as one people to do our best for Singapore.
Now that, of course, was the Prime Minister's statement following the results of the Punggol East by-election. Now we're currently waiting for the media conference held by some of the parties to be held. So in the meantime, let's speak to Dr. Gillian Koh once more. Now, Gillian, on hindsight, and just looking at tonight's election results, what would you say the PAP would try and do differently then?
Well, I think right from the start, we said that it would be challenging because there is the by-election effect. And if the other opposition parties had really, been of equal heft, then, they might dilute the opposition vote, but that was not the case. So I'm not sure what else they could have done, really, quite honestly. They rolled out new policy initiatives. They mentioned, they talked about developing of transport infrastructure, doubling MRT lines by 2030, more in the marriage and parenthood package. They actually, have now introduced paternity leave, which is a signal for a different way of viewing parenting. All these things, but maybe it needed a lot more time. It was too soon, and it would be too late for Punggol East voters to really pay attention to all the details. I don't know. But the key thing is we have to frame this as a by-election, and I think the Prime Minister, the Secretary General of People's Action Party has said no less than that. But we look forward to what the Workers' Party bigwigs have to say about it as well.
Now, of course, the Workers' Party had also said, that this by-election is the barometer, sort of a report card for the PAP since the 2011 general election.
So we saw interesting repartee on that point, didn't we? Where DPM Teo Chee Hian, Assistant Secretary General of the PAP, was saying that he didn't see the Workers' Party coming up with new ideas of voting, showing where they really stood on different things. And then you saw the Secretary General of the Workers' Party, Lau Tia Kiang, giving a robust defense of his party's sort of record in Parliament. And then them lobbying again and saying, but you can see that the PAP has also not responded to our suggestions. So I think that's a good campaign, because really every election is an opportunity to look at what matters to Singaporeans. And it's an opportunity for us to understand what are the public policies that are put in place to shape the lives of Singaporeans and how responsive it is or not. So I suppose in this case, the Workers' Party was there with their 3 rallies, very systematically building up their message, and the crowds were there. So I think they were very accessible in that sense at a large scale. And listening to this repartee.
We've always heard that, the next general election or the next election will be fought the day after, the previous one. So what do you think are some of the, important lessons that both parties will take from this result? What are their immediate tasks and priorities?
Well, I think that for the PAP, when we're talking about a general election, it's a different kind of contest, and where really for the voters, you really are trying to vote in the government. So for the PAP, what are the lessons? I think that they need to continue to build up their links on the ground, especially now in Punggol East, where you really have to rebuild the grassroots support and around an advisor because you no longer have a representative. And, for the Workers' Party, as we were saying before the announcement, they will have to work doubly hard to deliver on what they promised. What are the lessons? I think, that really going out at the rallies, making an impression, building up the message across 3 rallies in the case of WP was probably quite effective. But I maintain my position that it was a by-election, so it is not easy for the governing party to actually turn the tide when people know that the PAP is in power and they will take the second, third look at the opposition parties.
Any idea historically how Punggol East has voted before? I mean, of course, it was only just carved out from the greater Pasir Ris Punggol GRC at the last GE. Yeah. But any indication of how whether or not there's been any change in sentiment for this ward?
Well, I think it's a good part of Singapore has been the PAP sort of stronghold, so to speak. I think what's different is that you see the Workers' Party trying to build up their support in the northeastern area. And that's why the best losers in Parliament, the NCMPs, are from Workers' Party. So you can see that it's Hougang, Aljunied, Joo Chiat, East Coast, and then, further east and northwards, clearly Punggol East, which extends their reach a little beyond Aljunied GRC into what used to be Pasir Ris Punggol. So you can see that there's a method to it.
There is a method, which is why I want to ask, what do you think the Workers' Party will be setting their sights on next?
I've just mentioned it. It was a very close call in Joo Chiat and rather close call in East Coast.
So you think that the next election they'll probably focus on these two?
Yes, we have to remember that Pasir Ris Punggol is helmed by the Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean. He does have a large constituency of very young voters as well, but they are developing the area in the same way that Punggol East has those struggles as well. So I'm sure they'll work doubly hard to kind of put in the infrastructure that's needed. It's Punggol East is actually close to the heart of Pasir Ris Punggol, and there are lots of centralized facilities. That means you have to go to different sort of central areas to enjoy the waterway and things like that. But when it was carved out, then it was left to hurry up and develop and become its own little town. So I think that was a struggle with Punggol East.
All right, we'll pick up the conversation in just a while. Right now, we're also waiting for the media conference to be held at the Workers' Party headquarters. I believe that some of the key players are making their way to their headquarters, and we'll hear from them very soon. But right now, the PAP are holding their press conference right now. Let's listen in.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I think what I intend to do is to let Dr. Koh say a few things first, and then I will say a few things, and it will take just a few questions. You will know that the Prime Minister has just issued a statement, and we can take reference from that also. Welcome.
So thank you everybody for coming. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the voters of Punggol East who has given me their votes and supported me, whom I've had the opportunity to connect and make friends over the last couple of weeks. I also want to thank the supporters, the volunteers, and all the branch activists who has worked hard during this campaign to help us cover the grounds. And of course, not forgetting all the party members who has rallied behind this cause and given us their fuller support. I would like to continue serving where the party feels is appropriate and the best place for me going forward. And thank you for being here tonight.
Let's say a few words in Chinese.
我要感谢板额洞的居民在这次补选的时候给予我他们的支持，还有他们的票数。虽然这次补选并没有办法担任他们的议员，所以感到有点失望。但我相信板额洞的居民给我的支持。我已经心领了。 那我也要借这个机会感谢我的支持者，还有我们的义工，还有党工，在这9天里面，披星戴月的为我们处理这次竞选的活动。当然也要感谢党里的成员，还有党里的这些支持者，在这几天里面也不辞劳苦的到我们这个榜东来，为我们发传单和这里的选民接触。那日后我也希望，能够继续为新加坡人服务。那就要看看我们党里的支配认为我在哪里能够为新加坡人做出更大的贡献。谢谢大家。
Well, the voters of Punggol East have made their decision, and we respect that decision. I would like to congratulate Ms. Li Lian. I would also like to thank those voters who have voted for the PAP and for Pokun. It is always going to be difficult, as it is a by-election. The government will continue with our program for the long-term good of Singaporeans. For the government and the PAP, the hard work continues. I would like to thank all those who have helped in this very intense campaign. And I hope that the voters of Punggol East can give us their support the next time. Thank you very much.
If I may have
Sure,
two
go ahead.
questions. Do you think the loss is due to a by-election effect, or the fact that when the opposition called for more members into parliament, that was what swayed the voters? My second question to you is, what will happen to all the current programs that are being run right now by the PAP?
Well, we always knew that it was going to be difficult because it is a by-election. We came into this by-election and there were circumstances already as we came into the by-election. And of course, there were local issues as well. So we knew it was going to be a difficult election because of that. And as for the programs that Dr. Koh has put forward, now that he's no longer the MP, and obviously he will not have the same capability to carry out all those programs. Other questions?
Is the PAP surprised about the vote swing?
As I said, this is a by-election, and we coming into the by-election, there were a number of circumstances which precipitated the by-election, and of course there were also issues here, local issues, which we were aware of, and so it was always going to be difficult.
Do you see further implications on maybe the next election?
I think it's premature to make a conclusion on that.
What were these circumstances you were making reference to?
Well, there were local issues such as, Rivervale Plaza is well known to everyone, and it's very unfortunate that this has happened there. It has been an irritant to many of the residents, and we're very, very sorry for that. Other issues, other questions?
Do you expect the vote difference to be as big as 10%?
Well, as I said, coming into a by-election, and particularly the circumstances into which we came into the by-election and because of the local issues that we faced here, we expected a very difficult fight. Are there any other questions besides this one?
医生，我可以问一下，就是一直以来这4角战的话，应该是占优势的。对于这样的成绩，您觉得怎么样呢？
我觉得最终决定还是由选民决定。我认为我跟我的团队已经尽我们所能，尽量跟居民接触，也表现出一个很好的这个能够落实的计划。那最终决定还是选民的，我们会尊重选民的这个意识。
Can you share with us what PM Lee talked to you about after the results were announced?
Well, I think PM has said that he's proud of what we have done here, and he will allow us to continue to serve in the future in whatever capacity the party feels is appropriate for us.
PM, what do you see? What do you think the effects of the by-election are, and will Rivervale Plaza be completed?
Well, I'm sure the Rivervale Plaza will be completed. The contractors will have to do their job.
As to the effect of the by-election?
As I said, this is a by-election, and I think we can take reference from PM's statement on that. PM has made a statement on that. So basically, to conclude, I would say that the government will continue with our programs for the long-term benefit of Singaporeans. There's a lot of hard work ahead because these are major programs that we're putting into place. For the voters of Punggol East, I think we are proud to have been able to serve them, and we hope that they will be able to support us the next time round. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, there we have it. The media conference there held by the PAP. We've just heard from Dr. Koh Poh Koon, the candidate for the Punggol East there in the Punggol East seat, and also Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean. Gillian, after hearing what Dr. Koh had to say and what Mr. Teo had to say, what do you make of what will happen next for the party, and you know, where possibly could Dr. Koh play a role in any capacity?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that during the hustings, I seem to recall Dr. Koh saying that he would be committed to serve, and if he could, he would also want to continue to serve Punggol East residents. That was before. So we'll see if he is assigned, presumably by his party, to continue to work in Punggol East, because it is hard work. He's already started the work. He's built up his relationship. He said that he's connected to Punggol. It would seem useful to continue, just as, let's say, Desmond Chew had said he was committed to Hougang when he ran the Hougang by-election. So there is some merit to staying the course and building on what you have already done, pretty much like Li Lian did as well.
So we expect him to be fielded in Punggol East in the next GE.
And that would always be a tactical thing. I think that there are many sort of factors that go into who gets fielded where. But it would, it is a lot of hard work, groundwork. If you want to really nurture the ground, you have to be there, you have to be seen to be there, and doing the day-to-day work of caring for the residents. Yeah.
Now, of course, with Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean, he talked about the programs that Dr. Koh Poh Koon had put forward, and that, of course, acknowledged now that he has not been elected as the candidate, as the MP, he would not have the same capability in carrying out those programs. How do you read that?
Well, I think that, I know how MPs work, and they also have, even if they're from the PAP, they also have difficult battles with government agencies to get different things done, and so there is something that comes with the authority of being the MP that allows you to speak up for the residents, and also to make sort of petitions that certain things be done, whether to put in ramps or different transport arrangements and things like that. So I think it would be difficult for him to actually make a plea. I'm sure he'll still do that. Point is this: voters have made a choice that the number is for the WP. So respect that, and I think that the voters should also expect something of the WP MP. She's made many promises, and they should look to her. I think that's what's fair. Also in the hustings, I think the Workers' Party raised the issue of then how the management of town councils are switched over when there is a change. And so I think that the Workers' Party is going to be very kind of, will publicize how that transition happens. So it'll be very important for the PAP as well as the government agencies to really manage this discussion of how a transition happens between parties when something like this happens in Singapore.
Sorry, I really had to ask you this. I mean, given that we're talking about the results here, Deputy Prime Minister Teo had talked about how the Rivervale Plaza saga, and he actually apologized for, the whole situation. But do you think the whole Michael Palmer situation had possibly anything to do with the result?
Well, let's see. In the Hougang by-election, the PAP candidate, of course, lost, but he managed to swing it by 2%. I'm not sure that this sort of scandal actually affects the ground that much. It might for different constituencies, I'm not sure. This is a group of people who are middle-aged, they have young families. Maybe they put some store on this issue of fidelity and integrity and things like that. But every time you go on the ground, you ask, at that time, Hogang voters, what they thought about Yao Shin-yong affair and things like that, they would say, that's fine, let's separate the personal from the private. I don't really remember if you'd done those kind of interviews with Punggol East residents, and they also said, probably let's separate the personal from the private. So let's see how this kind of issue plays out in Singapore, among Singaporeans, sort of in their minds. We'll have to do more surveys, obviously.
All right. All right, thanks, Gillian. We'll speak later in the show.
Okay.
Now let's go to our reporter on the ground, May Wong, who has been stationed at the PAP branch office tonight. May?
Right, Sharon and Dom. Well, the information, as you've just seen on television as well, in terms of the news conference given by Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean as well as Dr. Koh Poh Koon, the PAP candidate, was the fact that they were extremely stoic when they responded to questions fielded by the media. Clearly, Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean did not want to get into whether or not the loss was due to a by-election effect, or whether or not the loss was due to opposition calling on residents to shore up more support for the opposition. Instead, he said that the residents have made their decision. He respects their decision, and also the fact that going into this by-election, there was a lot of difficult circumstances which they had to tackle. And difficult circumstances include the fact that the Rivervale Plaza was still under upgrading, and that it had stalled because the contractor had gone bust. So he cited that as one of the difficult circumstances in terms of going into this by-election. In addition, Mr. Teo also mentioned the fact that it was not a contest that was to be taken lightly to begin with in the first place. They knew it was going to be a keen contest. They knew it was going to be a tough fight. However, they said that residents have already made the choice. But the government, the ruling party, People's Action Party, will continue to work on behalf of Singaporeans and continue to work hard to put out the programs that are necessary to help Singaporeans climb up the social ladder, climb up the economic ladder. In addition, it was also stated previously by Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong in his statement to say that this is not the last you've seen of Dr. Koh Poh Koon, because he has plans for Dr. Koh Poh Koon, saying that in the future he wants to field him as one of a future candidate for future general election, because he believes that he has a potential to be able to contribute. But for now, that is the situation, and in terms of the programs, well, they will just have to hand it off to the opposition party when the time comes around. Sharon and Dom.
All right, thanks for that. May Wong reporting to us from the PAP branch office in the Punggol East constituency. Now, we are currently waiting for a Workers' Party media conference to begin. We understand that the candidate, as well as some of the party leaders, are making their way to the Workers' Party headquarters at the side Albi Road. Now, meantime, the Singapore Democratic Alliance's Desmond Lim, now he thanked Punggol residents and his supporters after conceding defeat earlier, and he said he ran in the election to keep the SDA flame alive.
No, I've already done my best. It has been a fast but a hard-ending race. And I would say that I have expected the risks and challenges before I enter into this contest. But however, it's important for SDA to contest to keep the political flame alive. And we will be working more harder, fight harder for the next coming GE. And I would like to thank the Punggol East residents nonetheless. Thank you.
And the Reform Party's Kenneth Jeyaretnam also spoke to reporters earlier outside one of the counting centres at North Vista Secondary School, and he congratulated the Workers' Party for winning the by-election.
We don't care if we have lost our deposit tonight, which I'm not confirming at the moment. It's a small price to pay for democracy, and we don't care how many deposits we lose if we achieve that goal.
Now, the People's Action Party candidate, Dr. Koh Poh Koon, he thanked voters and supporters in a news conference a short while ago. Speaking at the People's Action Party branch office, Dr. Koh says he will continue serving the party.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the voters of Punggol East who has given me their votes and supported me, whom I've had the opportunity to connect and make friends over the last couple of weeks. I also want to thank the supporters, the volunteers, and all the branch activists who has worked hard during this campaign to help us cover the grounds. And of course, not forgetting all the party members who has rallied behind this cause. and given us their fuller support. I want to continue serving where the party feels is appropriate and the best place for me going forward. And thank you for being here tonight.
Well, Singapore's Deputy Prime Minister Teo Chee Hean has also congratulated Lee Li Lian from the Workers' Party on her win, but he says the hard work for the government continues.
Well, the voters of Punggol East have made their decision, and we respect that decision. I would like to congratulate Ms. Lee Li Lian. I would also like to thank those voters who have voted for the PAP and for Po Kun. It is always going to be difficult, as it is a by-election. The government will continue with our program for the long-term good of Singaporeans. For the government and the PAP, the hard work continues. I would like to thank all those who have helped in this very intense campaign. And I hope that the voters of Punggol East can give us their support the next time. So thank you very much.
Now, the Workers' Party's Lee Li Lian has won the Punggol East by-election by about 10 percentage points over her closest rival, the People's Action Party's Dr. Po Kun. Now, to crunch the numbers for you, Ms. Lee garnered 16,038 votes. That's just over 54.5%.
While her closest rival, Dr. Koh, got 12,856 votes, or about 43.7%, and the remaining two candidates, Kenneth Jayaratnam of the Reform Party, well, he got 353 votes, that's 1.2%, and Desmond Lim of the Singapore Democratic Alliance, 168 votes, that's just over 0.5%. And let's speak with Dr. Gillian Koh one more time. Looking at the numbers, Kenneth Jayaratnam, he got 1.2% of the votes compared to Desmond Lim's less than 1%, which is about 0.5%. He actually performed better being a new face in this contest. That doesn't speak very well for Desmond Lim, does it?
Well, I think that yes, it is sort of even more dismal showing than in the GE. But you watched him and he's still quite determined and he's not giving up. And I think that the SDA is a party, is an alliance, of course, but it's an alliance of parties with a history. So I think that he could really rethink it and try and build on that history. What I was quite impressed with was the quote with Mr. Kenneth Jayaratnam. He said that he didn't mind losing the deposit because it's a small price to pay for democracy. And that's indeed what we saw in the by-election, that you saw 4 parties in the fray. It was a very vigorous campaign. Of course, you know, we said that there were 2 forerunners, and but people actually had a choice, and that's what a democracy is about. I think a lot of critics say that in Singapore, you know, democracy is lacking, but I think it's instances like this where we see that people are out there presenting themselves and saying that we have ideas, we have different ideas, but most of all we're convicted about this need to represent different interests and concerns.
Now, of course, we are waiting for Workers' Party media conference to be held. The candidate, Ms. Lee Li Lian, as well as some of the party leaders are currently making their way to the Workers' Party headquarters at Syed Alwi Road. So we will be waiting for that. Now, since we're talking about the Workers' Party here, now Ms. Lee is the first woman opposition you know, to actually win since, I think, 1965.
In a single-member constituency.
Yeah, in a single-member constituency. And, of course, the second opposition woman in Parliament, following Ms. Sylvia Lim.
That's right. There'll be now 10 opposition members of Parliament. You know, so we have 6 from the last general election under Workers' Party ticket, Hogang and Aljunied, and now you have Ms. Li Lian. So they have the 7 duly elected Workers' Party members. But remember that Workers' Party has 2 non-constituency members of Parliament. One from who was contesting in Joo Chiat, Mr. Yee Zhenjong, and also you have Gerald Giam. And then you have Ms. Lina Chiam. So now it's 10 opposition voices in Parliament vis-a-vis the 80 from the PAP. That's you know, it's not a balance or anything like that, but it's much larger a group than before GE 2011. So I think that's a huge, large call, larger than we've ever seen before. And, you know, I think Singaporeans will be looking forward to how that might really make an impact at the national level. What does it mean in terms of taking people through the different arguments of public policy and, in the end, defining what Singapore is going to be like in the next few years?
All right, we'll continue our discussion later in the show. But first, let's talk about Prime Minister Lee and his statement that was released earlier. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong released a statement on the Punggol East by-election results. And he says he respected the choice of Punggol East voters, and he congratulated Ms. Li Lian and the Workers' Party for winning this by-election.
Now, the Prime Minister also said he has spoken to Dr. Koh to thank him and his team for their hard work and for fighting a spirited campaign. Now, of course, the Prime Minister said he was naturally disappointed, but in good heart, he is keen to continue serving in any role that the party decides, and that's what Dr. Koh actually said, beg your pardon. And of course, the Prime Minister has also mentioned he wanted to field him again in a future election so that he could be part of his team to serve Singapore.
That's right, and he continues to say that now that the Punggol East by-election is over, that we should refocus on national issues. And of course, he's mentioned quite a few heavy agenda coming up. The white paper on population, well, that will be debated in Parliament, and also Budget 2013 in less than a month away. So he's pleaded to Singaporeans to come together as one people to do their best for Singapore. All right, we are going for a quick break right now. We've got lots more coming up.
Now, the Workers' Party's Li Lian has won the Punggol East by-election by about 10 percentage points. A closest rival, the People's Action Party's Dr. Koh Poh Koon. To look at the numbers for you, Ms. Li garnered 16,038 votes. That's just over 54.5%.
Her closest rival, Dr. Koh, got 12,856 votes. That's 43.7%. And the remaining 2 candidates, Kenneth Jayaratnam of the Reform Party, he got 353 votes. That's 1.2%. And Desmond Lim of the Singapore Democratic Alliance, he had 168 votes. That's just over 0.5%.
Now, Ms. Lee makes history as only the 2nd elected female opposition MP in post-independent Singapore and the 1st in a single-seat ward. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has congratulated her and said the PAP respects the result. He also thanked all who voted for the PAP's Dr. Koh, who he said was a good candidate who had shown character and courage, and he said Dr. Koh will be fielded again in future.
Mr. Lee also said in a by-election, the governing party candidate always has a tougher fight. He added that the government must continue to govern and that its plans and programs are already in progress, but will take time to show results.
Now, the PAP held a media conference tonight thanking supporters.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the voters of Punggol East who has given me their votes and supported me, whom I've had the opportunity to connect and make friends over the last couple of weeks. I also want to thank the supporters, the volunteers, and all the branch activists who has worked hard during this campaign to help us cover the grounds. And of course, not forgetting all the party members who has rallied behind this cause and given us their fuller support. I would like to continue serving where the party feels is appropriate and the best place for me going forward. And thank you for being here tonight.
Well, the PAP First Assistant Secretary General Teo Chee Hean also spoke.
Well, the voters of Punggol East have made their decision, and we respect that decision. I would like to congratulate Ms. Li Lian. I would also like to thank those voters who have voted for the PAP and for Po Kun. It is always going to be difficult, as it is a by-election. The government will continue with our program for the long-term good of Singaporeans. For the government and the PAP, the hard work continues. I would like to thank all those who have helped in this very intense campaign. And I hope that the voters of Punggol East can give us their support the next time. Thank you very much.
And here are the supporters of the Workers' Party. They've been upbeat tonight. Ms. Li Lian won 41% of the vote the last time she ran in Punggol East. That was in the 2011 general election.
Desmond Lim of the Singapore Democratic Alliance have been the first to concede defeat earlier tonight, and we now know he has lost his deposit. He said his party is not dampened and will fight harder in the next contest. He also thanked his supporters.
Well, I've already done my best. It has been a fast but a hard-ending race. And I would say that I have expected the risks and challenges before I enter into this contest. But however, it's important for SDA to contest to keep the political flame alive. And we will be working more harder, fight harder for the next coming GE. And I would like to thank the Punggol East residents nonetheless. Thank you.
The Reform Party's candidate Kenneth Jeyaratnam earlier said reports that he had conceded defeat were, I quote, a complete fabrication. He has now congratulated the Workers' Party on its victory, and he said the election was fought mainly on local issues.
We don't care if we have lost our deposit tonight, which I'm not confirming at the moment. It's a small price to pay for democracy, and we don't care how many deposits if we achieve that goal.
Of course, currently we are waiting for the Workers' Party to hold its media conference at its headquarters in Syed Alwi Road. In the meantime, let's speak to Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies. Now, during this by-election, the Workers' Party has been criticised for being arrogant and possibly unwilling to contribute to opposition unity. Several questions here, I guess. The first being, do you think the Workers' Party has been at the receiving end of this opposition, the other opposition, fellow opposition parties, you know, more than any other previous election?
Well, yes, very much so. I think we had this sort of rather dramatic incidents at the start where SDP actually publicized its communication to WP about wanting to work together, to collaborate in order not to split the vote. And clearly what they did was to show how WP was not responsive to that. I think we also heard Lau Tia Kiang speak about this himself at the second rally, where he said that it was quite inconceivable for the opposition to come together, certainly not ever again. He said that there were just too many personalities to manage. What I would say is, just taking a step back, in 1991, where there were different leaders, of course, they did work together to decide not to split the vote and create what we now call the by-election effect in a general election. So basically the parties got together and they said that they would not contest more than 50% of the seats that were up during a general election, so that the PAP would, on nomination day, be the governing party, and that would allow Singaporeans to, you know, take a step back and be more prepared to look at what was on offer by the other opposition parties. So remember, they did that. Then they did that in 1997, and they also did that in 2001. So there was some measure of unity in the opposition camp
but what has
for
happened
that many
since?
years.
But what has happened since that they can't get get back to that unity?
Well, we're not sort of party to all the different negotiations, but Mr. Lau Tia Kiang suggested that the parties had split and there are different personalities now in charge. He also did point to sort of an unhappy split between SDP of the past with Dr. Chee Soon Juan and the falling out with his mentor Chiam See Tong. I think he was referring to something to do with that. Things have changed. But WP is also a party on the march, so they're very tight ship, they're very disciplined, and in order to maintain that discipline, it's very hard to work with many different other parties in any sort of very close collaboration, except to just decide not to split the vote in sort of constituencies, especially in a general election. So we saw that in GE 2011, but remember, Punggol East was the only constituency with a three-cornered fight.
Right.
So we saw it again.
So what
is so
will
attractive about Punggol East? I think it's because precisely because this is a middle-class sort of constituency, but also because they're the sandwich class. As we said, they're not poor enough to receive help, they're not rich enough to feel comfortable, so they're in this funny space where a lot of government policies that have been designed over the past sort of half a decade, 5 years, really are targeted assistance for the people at the bottom to level the playing field, to level them up. But what happens when you've reached the middle band? What else is there? So you've seen in the past year, since the general election, past year and a half or so, government sort of introducing many more policies to make more subsidies available to the elderly, for instance, so that you reduce the burden on the younger generation who actually would ordinarily have to pay their bills. You see that as a big theme in the by-election. How will the elderly cope? What about healthcare costs and things like that? In fact, the newly elected MP spent a lot of time talking about the elderly and how she thought that maybe there should be more support, especially in terms of healthcare bills, whether there should be limits on how Medisave is used for people beyond 75. She said, let's not have any. She said that maybe the elderly in the constituency could be able to access professional specialist care in hospitals instead of needing a referral. So things like that. I think, that's what makes it attractive to opposition parties, because it's just that space which is difficult to design policy for.
Talking about policies, is it fair to expect that, future policies coming on board would be somehow shaped by how, all these by-elections and elections have resulted?
Well, I think that would be one thing. As we said, there would be now 10 members of the opposition camp in Parliament, and you see them take on many issues. Even the Workers' Party during the hustings, when you saw the government introduce the new marriage and parenthood package, lowering the cost of childcare because there are more subsidies available for working moms. Ms. Li Lian actually said, well, wonderful, we're not out to be opposition for opposition's sake, oppose for opposing's sake. So she was happy with that, but she hoped that there would be even more help for stay-at-home mothers who actually don't get as much subsidy as working mothers. And that would be more help for single mothers. So they're really trying to push the envelope, especially for very particular groups of people. So yes, I think that you will see more call to do much more broader social safety nets. The thing is this: if you're leading a country and you're thinking about how to do this, you also have a responsibility to say who's going to pick up the tab. How do we finance this greater social support? If we are going to address every single group, every single segment, I think you have to think very hard about who then is going to be working and keeping the golden goose pump and thriving and bearing the golden eggs.
Voters are actually, whatever the Workers' Party is actually put forward resonates with, I guess, the voter profile in Punggol East, of course.
Right.
We are currently getting word on the ground that the Workers' Party's Li Lilian has arrived at the Syed Alwi headquarters of the Workers' Party. So I believe that the media conference is about to start anytime soon.
So we will expect that to happen. But let's continue our conversation. We have one more opposition party MP now in Parliament. Do you think that will make a huge difference? In terms of debate and, like we've mentioned earlier, policies even?
Yes, well, I think the point is that Ms. Li Lilian was very specific about wanting to address the needs of the elderly, of women, of mothers. So I think you'll see more focus from the WP bench on some of these issues. So that's something to look forward to. The government has actually introduced many other things that she said she wanted to look at. So transport infrastructure. We've had announcements not just about doubling the MRT lines, but also about connectivity for the people on the ground, really the walkways and things like that. This is something she addressed in her election campaign, and then at the same time the government said it was already looking at it. So I think Punggol East will benefit from that national program. So I think what she'll have to do is to look at all the micro solutions. She said that she'd look at feeder buses as well. So let's see if she's able to deliver on some of these things. More childcare centres, which as an MP you'll have to go to, I suppose, HDB and all those agencies. And
the Workers' Party media conference is just about to start, so let's listen in to what they have to say.
For you, is this? So Workers' Party.
This is
You can look up for a while.
Maybe you want to start and ask the photographer to.
What is this for?
This for.
Is she supposed to hold?
No. Ours is over there. Ours is over there.
Tonight.
The mic. Volume of the mic, please. You on it? This mic is not working.
You want to test? Or you use this one?
Yeah, okay, it's on now.
Tonight, the Punggol East voters have spoken. They have returned Li Lilian as their MP with a 54.52% victory over the PAP candidate Dr. Koh Poh Kun, who garnered 43.7%. Punggol East voters now join Hougang and Aljunied voters in saying that they do want opposition in their backyard. We accept this victory with gratitude and humility, conscious of the responsibilities it carries and the expectations of Singaporeans in Punggol East and elsewhere. We will do our best by the residents of Punggol East and Singaporeans. WP's campaign in this by-election has gone on smoothly, and we are very satisfied. Our party leadership and its full machinery were thrown behind Lilian. Our volunteers, as well as members of the public, have played an indispensable role, taking on diverse tasks, including media production, assisting in house visits, and polling agent duties. On behalf of the party leadership, I thank them all for their generosity and spirit. The impact of our campaign has been felt on the ground, with the PAP ministers and MPs scrambling to react up to the 11th hour. This is also an important episode for Singaporeans to take note of: the value of political competition in getting the government to sit up and take notice. Despite this victory, the Workers' Party is still a small party with much to do and improve upon. The Workers' Party will continue to serve its residents in Hougang SMC and Aljunied GRC, and now the residents of Punggol East SMC, on the ground and in Parliament. We will also continue to engage the government on issues which affect Singaporeans' lives. We hope that this campaign will also encourage more women to come forward and enter political life. As Lilian has shown, women can fight alongside men, and in addition, contribute a fresh perspective and style. We are proud of Lilian, and we need more women in politics. I now pass you over to Lilian.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear voters of Punggol East, I thank you very much for your vote of confidence. This is a privilege entrusted to me by you, and I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to serve. I will serve you to the best of my abilities, manage your estate diligently, and stand up for you when you need to be heard. While I celebrate this victory tonight, I know there is a lot of work to be done. The Workers' Party and I will be working very hard to ensure a smooth handover. That is our top priority. I look forward to seeing you in Punggol East and working with you closely to build a strong community in Punggol East. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all members and volunteers for making this possible, and the party's leadership for their trust in me. Thank you very much. 各位党额中的选民，非常感谢您对我的信任，我必定会尽全力为您服务，在国会里维护您的权益，我也会把市政会给管理好。除了胜利的喜悦，我也知道有许多工作在等着我去做。我们目前要做的，就是要如何顺畅的接手市政会。我期待在选期内见到大家，让我们共同打造一个团结、充满活力的党儿东。我要感谢工人党的志愿者、党员和义工们的努力和支持，也要感谢党的领袖以及领导人对我的信任，把这个重任交给我。谢谢。
Thank you, Lilian. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now we would like to take some questions if there are any.
A few questions for Ms. Lee. First, what are your immediate plans after today? And also, can you comment about the margin? The last time you had 41%, now over 4%. So were you expecting that? Some questions for Mr. Lau as well. How would you describe this victory? Would you call this a milestone for the party? And also, how do you intend to derive the synergy between the three wards now, Hougang, Aljunied, and now Punggol East?
All right, my most immediate task is to build up the town council. As we are all aware, the current Punggol East Town Council is actually under the Pasir Ris Punggol Town Council. All right, so that will be the most immediate thing I need to do. Now, after which, I will also need to build up a group of volunteers to help lead grassroots as well as community events in Punggol East. Yes. And there's another thing I'd like to announce. My MPS, Meet the People session, we are ready to serve. Okay, it will commence 4th of February. Address Block 135, Rivervale Street. Okay, and that is just directly next to Bakau LRT. From 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. 4th of February. Please put that down so that people can read. Thank you.
Sorry, there's a question on the margin. Are you expecting
The margin.
Yeah, the last time you had 41.5.
Well, I have to thank the voters of Punggol East for their confidence and trust in me. There'll be more that I need to do, definitely.
Mr. Lau, are you going to answer the question? No. Okay, can we have the next question?
我讲他一样，可以讲一下你现在首要任务是做些什么？现在重复一次吧，然后给
我刚才用英
刘秘书长，再分享一下说，这一次那个工人党呢是接连2次赢得了补选，而且是赢得更多，这反映了国人怎么样的情绪？然后你们会不会组成一个超级市政会，把后港、港俄东还有阿玉林联合在一起呢？请你用华语来说。
You have answered about how council did, right?
Correct. Not about the statement. Yes, I think you should mention about the statement issue.
有关市政会的问题呢，在稍后的时间里面呢，我们市政会主席呢应该会发出比较详细的声明，那请大家耐心等候。
但至于说你们比上次赢得更多，你怎么看？代表的是显示的是什么东西呢？
我们觉得很感谢板鹅东的这个居民对我们的这个信任，我们也会尽力的为板鹅东服务。这也I think you answered the question.
No, because you.
Sorry.
刘先生可以跟我们讲一下，这样的一个成绩是你在你料想当中的吗？
What is it?
这样的一个选举成绩是在你们料想当中的吗？这样的一个选举成绩是在你们的料想当中的吗？还是出乎你们的预料？
我只能说，我们非常感激板鹅东选民的支持和信任。
So you mentioned that this election is seen as a national barometer of the government's performance. So what do you think this result is actually, what voters are saying with these results?
Well, I mean, we have not actually looked at the detailed precinct results for more analysis. We hope that our message during the campaign resonated with the voters, i.e. To use their vote to get the government to pay more attention to their concerns. But of course, you will have to ask the Punggol East voters exactly what was in their mind, because I believe that the voters have different considerations. Each person is different, so I would not want to speak for all of them by making any sweeping statements.
What is the impact of this victory to your party then? I mean, what does it say about the Workers' Party as the opposition party in Singapore? And also how you would, I suppose, deal with not just the PAP, but this other opposition camp as well that seems to be taken out in the Workers' Party during the rallies?
Well, what we can say is that we are indeed very encouraged by the results as a party. We take it as a sign that at least the residents in Punggol East do see some value in having WP MPs in Parliament, and at least a majority of them endorse our brand of politics. We hope that this is a signal of that, but we are certainly very encouraged by the results.
Besides confidence given by the Punggol East voters, particularly what strategies and what can lead the party to win this by-election?
I think I leave that to analysts to comment on. I'm sure there will be many opinions. Yeah, so as I said earlier, we would like to think that at least part of our message during the rallies did resonate with the Punggol East voters, yeah. And of course what Lilian can bring to the table for them, yeah. Sorry.
Lilian, now that you've won, how do you plan to resolve the Rivervale Plaza issue since the construction there has been repeatedly under the previous MPs there?
Well, as mentioned in my rally speech, the Prime Minister, he visited the place and also said that it will be completed by sometime June or July this year. All right, I don't see why there should be a delay, regardless of whichever party that take over.
For the party leaders, firstly, do you think the by-election effect has helped the party win this time round? And secondly, what do you think are the reasons behind such a big vote swing?
As for the whether the by-election effect played in the minds of voters, certainly we would think that it probably had some effect, but exactly how many voters thought their way and all that, it's very hard for us to assess. And you asked about the vote swing. Well, earlier on, like at the start of the campaign, I did say that it was probably the case that voters would also like to use the by-election to send a message to the ruling party. I think the ruling party perhaps should be the ones also to tell us what this vote means to them. And I would assume that there is a certain segment of Punggol East voters who did vote based on national issues and the fact that probably they want the government to do more.
So do you think this is a vote against the ruling party or a vote for the Workers' Party then?
It's probably a mixture, I think. Yeah.
What significance has this by-election result had in the party's plans for its future? And especially given that during the rallies, the party had 4 new faces to name. So, I mean, what is the party's plans for future?
Andrea, it's very hard to answer your question briefly because there's so many, sub-issues in that. I think, we went into this by-election to give Punggol East voters a chance to make a choice again since the seat became vacant, and that was our immediate aim. And we're very glad that the Punggol East voters have responded to the choice that we've given and found Lilian to be a credible choice. Of course, going forward, the party will have other things to plan for, including, as you mentioned, the future elections, perhaps. Regarding the new speakers who spoke at the rally, I mean, we can't say for now what the plans are for them, definitely. Yeah, but they are some of the new faces that we'd like to work with.
Can I add to that? I'd like to add that the result of the by-election shows that Punggol East voters, as well as Singaporeans, still expect the government to work harder. Although many policies has been reviewed and the government has been working towards that, the result shows that the effect has not really been trickled down to the ground. And people still feel the pressure of high cost of living and many other things as well. So I would expect that the government will work harder on that. And the Workers' Party will assist whenever we can. 我想本额公补选成绩的结果显示了新加坡人对行动党政府的期望。虽然行动党政府在2011年大选之后呢，也进行了许多政策上的这个改善，不过很明显的，它的效果呢还没有见效。所以呢，接下来呢，我想行动党政府呢应该更努力的去工作，而工人党也在可能的情况之下呢，尽量协助政府。
Yeah. During your campaign, you mentioned many issues. So what would be your one or few foremost issues you want to tackle?
I mean, if I have the time and chance, I want to tackle everything at one time.
Foremost one that you want to tackle and why?
I guess the pressure that's facing young families as well as the welfare of elderly.
Yeah,
do you consider this election a step towards a two-party system for Singapore? And does the party have in mind a time by which you can break perhaps the one-third benchmark in Parliament?
Well, let's look at statistics at the moment. 80 out of 87 seats are still in PAP hands. I calculated that was 92%. If you think it's a step towards a two-party system, I think we still have quite some way to go. But of course, I mean, I think in terms of governance, if Singaporeans really are concerned about, for example, major changes being made, let's say, to constitution and things like this, which require a one-third veto to stop, then I think, it's up to Singaporeans to kind of work towards that together with the political parties. Anyone who hasn't asked a question yet? Otherwise...
I know that you have a career, but do you plan to become a full-time MP?
Okay, there is such a possibility. I can't rule that out, but that is something that I'll decide along the way.
Just to follow up on that, Lilian, at the start of the campaign, you said you were planning to start in January. So how will you be elected to affect the January?
It shouldn't affect.
So you're still on track to maybe make it worse.
as well as my new role.
Question for Mr. Low. Do you think this victory, in addition to your speech on Tuesday on opposition unity, do you think the party has basically changed the face of opposition politics in Singapore?
Well, that I think it's better to ask people who attended the rally rather than me.
I was there.
Oh, you were there. So what do you think?
Okay, maybe one or two last questions since we seem to be very hot here and I think
of merging the three town councils together, and secondly also
Answer the question.
There have been a lot of PAP announcements about goodies and some of this thrown out of Singaporeans. How do you assess the entire campaign of your rivals as a whole?
Well, this is a very big question.
Well, we won't be commenting further on tonight, anything on what do you call that, town council. Okay, but look out, we'll be issuing a statement soon to everyone.
Early in the coming week.
My second question is how will you assess the campaign right as a whole for your rivals, given that there's a lot of goodies thrown out along the way by Singaporeans to the PAP government? A lot of parts of the campaign, there's a lot of PAP goodies thrown out. How will you assess the cost of the campaign for your rivals as a whole for this by-election?
I thought those measures that were introduced are welcoming, all right? And these are issues that the Workers' Party MPs have brought up in Parliament before. All right, and I think that what the voters of Punggol East have spoken, they want more voices. They want us to pressure the government more to have better changes and more changes.
Okay, wait, what wants to say?
I think tonight belongs to voters of Punggol East and also to Lilian. She has connected the ground very well. I think people of Punggol East and Lilian deserve an applause.
Okay, I think we'll stop the press conference because it's just going around and really very warm. Okay, if you don't mind, we'll end the press conference here, and if you have any further questions, perhaps you can come forward to ask us. Okay, thank you so much.
Anyway, thank you procession tomorrow. Right?
All right, there you have it. The media conference there held by the Workers' Party. Of course, Lau Tia Kiang, Li Lian, the MP that's just been voted in, Sylvia Lim and Peng Eng Huat, they're chairing the press conference.
Of course, yes, that's right. And Ms. Lee also took the opportunity to, talk about her immediate task, which was to build up the town council. She also announced Meet the People session, the location of it and the time of it. So, of course, the most pressing need, she said, it was the town council, because the current one is under the Pasir Ris Punggol GRC. So there was also a need, she said, to build up a group of volunteers as well.
So, Gillian, just coming to you, what do you make of what this press conference was all about? What they say, what do you make of it?
Well, I just wanted to take note of Mr. Lau's comment that clearly there are still some issues that, while are being addressed by the PAP, not trickling down to the people on the ground. And then he cited the cost of living issue. They campaigned hard on that. One of the things they, wrapped around that topic was really the facility of hawker centers. So, affordable food and things like that really nicely pulls everything together.
Right.
Cost of living and infrastructure.
All right. Give you a moment to regain your voice. In the meantime, we want to go to our colleague there, Wong Siu Ying. She is standing by with an update. Siu Ying, what do you have for us?
Yes, hi Dom. Now the press conference at Workers' Party headquarters just ended. Now emotions ran high here immediately after the announcement of the win. Now supporters, party members here cheered and hugged each other. Now shortly after, more supporters arrived and lined the street just outside the headquarters. They cheered and also sounded the car horn. Now traffic police has been deployed at the road junction just in front of the headquarters just to direct traffic Now, as you can see behind me, the press conference just ended and it's still a media scramble right here. Now, during the press conference, party chairman Sylvia Lim said that they accepted the victory with gratitude and they will do their best by residents of Punggol and Singaporeans. Now, she added that the campaign went really well and thanked volunteers and also party members. She also said that Workers' Party is still a small party with much to do and improve upon. Now, speaking at the press conference, newly elected MP Ms. Li Lilian said her immediate task is to build up the town council at Punggol East, and she said that they will start the Meet the People session as early as 4th of February. Now, there is Mr. Lau Tia Kiang, the party chief, said that the result of the election showed that Punggol residents and Singaporeans still expect the government to work harder, although many policies have been changed. Perhaps the effects have not filtered to the ground. Now, he said the Workers' Party will assist whenever they can. Now, when asked about the winning margin, both Ms. Lee and Mr. Lau would only say that they are thankful to the voters at Punggol East.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Wong Siu Ying, who's at the Workers' Party headquarters at Syed Alwi Road, giving a wrap of the media conference that the Workers' Party just held. Now, just a word and final thoughts from our guest tonight about this whole campaign.
I think it's outstanding that we, have another woman politician, and in this case, Li Lilian actually had to pound the pavement and win the votes. So, kudos to her, and also it'd be interesting to see that. Secondly, she mentioned the transition with the town council. I think this is an issue that's brewing. That we've got to look at what's the concept of the town council. Why is it that we are stuck in this issue at the moment? And I think this is the next big political question that will be brewing. Third, let us see how this huge corpus of opposition parliamentarians from the Workers' Party will make their impact, because now they're a bigger group. And let's see what sort of kind of impact they can make at the national level in terms of their contributions to policy development. I think they're very focused on cost of living issues. The elderly came up a lot in the by-election hustings, even discussions about seeing how we could, have re-employment laws that have even more teeth to ensure that the elderlies, the people who are aging, will be able to keep in the workforce. Very practical sort of points of policy which will I'm sure have a lot of hearing in the days to come.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Koh. We've been speaking with Dr. Gillian Koh from the Institute of Policy Studies in Singapore.
Definitely, as far as you're concerned, a lot to look forward to, especially, what's the happenings in Parliament.
Yes.
Now, of course, the opposition Workers' Party has said it is very satisfied with the outcome of the Punggol East by-election. Its candidate, Li Lilian, won the vote by about 10 percentage points over her closest rival, the People's Action Party's Dr. Koh Po Koon.
That's right. Workers' Party Chairman Sylvia Lim says that despite the victory, the Workers' Party is nevertheless still a small party and has a lot to do. But Ms. Lim says the result shows that Punggol East voters do want the opposition in their constituency.
Punggol East voters now join Hougang and Aljunied voters in saying that they do want opposition in their backyard. We accept this victory with gratitude and humility, conscious of the responsibilities it carries and the expectations of Singaporeans in Punggol East and elsewhere. We will do our best by the residents of Punggol East and Singaporeans.
Now, on her part, Ms. Lee says the party will work hard to make the administrative handover of the constituency a smooth one, and that this is the Workers' Party's top priority. She also thanked Punggol East residents for their vote of confidence.
Dear voters of Punggol East, I thank you very much for your vote of confidence. This is a privilege entrusted to me by you, and I'm grateful to be given the opportunity to serve. I will serve you to the best of my abilities, manage your estate diligently, and stand up for you when you need to be heard. While I celebrate this victory tonight, I know there is a lot of work to be done. The Workers' Party and I will be working very hard to ensure a smooth handover. That is our top priority. I look forward to seeing you in Punggol East and working with you closely to build a strong community in Punggol East. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank all members and volunteers for making this possible and the party's leadership for their trust in me. Thank you very much.
Well, to remind our viewers about the numbers for tonight in this by-election, the figures, here you go. Ms. Lee garnered 16,038 votes. That's just over 54.5%. Her closest rival, Dr. Koh, got 12,856 votes, or 43.7%.
Now, the remaining two candidates are Kenneth Jeyaratnam of the Reform Party. He got 353 votes, that's 1.2%. And Desmond Lim of the Singapore Democratic Alliance had 168 votes, that's just over 0.5%.
Well, Ms. Lee makes history as only the second elected female opposition MP in post-independence Singapore. Singapore Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong has congratulated Ms. Lee and said the People's Action Party respects the result.
He thanked all who voted for the PAP's Dr. Koh, who Mr. Lee said was a good candidate and one who has shown character and courage. And he says Dr. Koh will be fielded again in future. The PAP held a news conference to thank its supporters.
Take this opportunity to thank all the voters of Punggol East who has given me their votes and supported me, whom I've had the opportunity to connect and make friends over the last couple of weeks. I also want to thank the supporters, the volunteers, and all the branch activists who has worked hard during this campaign to help us cover the grounds. And of course, not forgetting all the party members who has rallied behind this cause going forward. And thank you for being here tonight.
Well, the Reform Party's candidate Kenneth Jeyaratnam has also congratulated the Workers' Party on its victory. Mr. Jeyaratnam is one of the two candidates whose vote shares are significantly below the 12.5% threshold needed to keep their election deposits.
And the Singapore Democratic Alliance's candidate, Desmond Lim, too, has lost his election deposit, and for him, it's the second time running. He ran in the same constituency in the 2011 general election, but this time his vote share, barely more than 0.5%, is less than the 4.5% he polled last time.
And you've been watching Channel News Asia's special coverage of the Punggol East by-election here in Singapore. I'm Dominic Loh. Thanks for your company.
And I'm Sharon Tong. Now remember, you can always keep up to date by logging on to channelnewsasia.com.
And coming up in half an hour, News Pulse with all the top stories for the day.